Watching, as you watch your bodies get sick and die and age and things, you're watching the lower bodies actually sap their energy and twist the template, the natural template that was supposed to be there. Because the natural template for humans, for all things actually, is divine health. It is that balance between the negative and the positive, that center point of engaged detachment that creates eternally divine health. That's where the balance is, and that's the path of joy, being able to follow that balance. Now, we simply sit in our hologram, and it's like going to a horror movie. It has shock value, where you just watch it go, have no idea how it's going or why it's going. And most people are just trying to do like one day at a time, or maybe 1 week at a time. Oh, I'll get through this week and see what next week pops up. It's like very often we don't say to ourselves, in fact, most often we don't, okay, this week has been an interesting experience that I created. I'm going to create a better experience next week. Now, some of us that are starting to get the fact that we're the creators and the manifestors of our experience, saying, I intend to create a better week. I will. I say it now. Do you know your subconscious? Do you know your body consciousness? Because if you don't, you still don't have that power, because it's accreted so much frequency that the will and intention and the twisted energy patterns that are stored in the lower bodies are still going to project your hologram out for you. Now, your mental body will too. So if you keep your thoughts in a balanced way and don't let yourself get too attached to negative or to positive and keep a nice balance, you will eventually allow that stuff to come up from your subconscious. You'll see it in your hologram, but you won't react to it where you give it the power. You'll take it back and say, you need healing. And you've just taken a part of yourself that's been out of control and assembled it back into yourself. So we're clearing our subconscious minds as we walk through the hologram and see the stuff that they throw up at us. They're showing us a part of ourselves that's out of harmony with its natural divine blueprint, that's kind of lost in chaos and doesn't know what to do. So that chaos comes back to us, and we're supposed to be able to realize that. Where we can say, okay, this chaos that just came into my life has a lot to do with me. It's showing me a part of myself from the past. Now, it's all happening now, but the past is the lower frequency part of yourself that's asking for your healing. Every negative experience or negative, unpleasant type experience that comes to you has a message for you about what needs to be healed in your template. You drew it to yourself, literally. You manifested it, literally. And that's hard to own it. They say you have to own it before you can make it go away. You really do. If you have experiences in your life that you don't like, you have to be able to realize, if you're going to be a conscious creator, you have to realize that my template has done this. All right? It's not anybody else's fault, even though it might seem like it is. Yeah, but you did this, but you did that. You're talking to your symbols. The people here are symbols in your hologram. You're a symbol in their hologram. Bring your power back and say, my hologram did this part of it, and I see it. Don't worry about their hologram. The one you need to clear is your own. You will literally draw versions of people to you that correspond with the frequencies you're sending out from the emotional body and the physical body. There's some really, it's kind of sad to watch people who have certain distortion patterns in strand 1 that affect the base chakra and affect their D1 projections. Excuse me. They tend to have all sorts of, and women have more of this. There's a repression factor that's been going on for thousands of years because they were trying to control the breeding of the gene lines here. So there's a lot of woman repression. Woman repression was not just a mental thing. It was a societal thing that directly affected how energy could process through the body. Women were not allowed to express. So because women had been repressed for so long, the template projects out things that resemble victimization, where if a woman doesn't know how to clear her base chakra, and a lot of us already learned that one in several other time frames, but some people have still watched this pattern happen. They will draw to themselves people constantly that are only interested in them sexually. When their hearts want somebody higher that loves them for who they are, they constantly draw on people that the only thing they care about is what kind of gender body they're walking around in, because they're sending out signals on the lower template that they don't realize are there. Their fields are saying, come and get me. They're broadcasting D1 frequency that's hitting the base chakra templates of the males, and they're saying, no problem, you know? And it's frustrating for women who go through that because, you know, I don't want this. I'm so sad. I'm not even going to talk to men anymore because all they want is sex. You know, all they want to do is chase me around because I happen to be in a female body. Can anybody like me for who I am? You know, I mean, I'm more than my body. When you start to heal the lower chakras and the templates that go with them, you start to not have those problems, where you start to actually draw to you males and same for males in the other way. If you get women that just want you for your money, that's the other pattern that goes with the base chakra one. There are distortions in strand 1 that have to do with power, getting power from the opposite gender by either sex or money. It's a power quest, and that's why so many people's relationships are tied up and twisted into power quests, where you think you're in love and the heart feels something and it gets translated through the body. Then all of a sudden these really sick dramas pop up where it feels like a power struggle. You're trying to take my power, now you're trying to take my power. And these resentments build up. These are processings of distortion patterns that are held in strand 1 that come up into strand 2, the emotional body, and process up into the higher chakras where you're in your mental body and you're communicating, and all of a sudden you're not hearing each other. You're coming from different perspectives. It's a polarity thing that actually has to do with distortions in the planetary grids that put those distortions in our strands 1 and 2 templates and partially in the 3rd strand template, which makes it very difficult for males and females to understand each other because they're throwing different sets of frequencies. The natural set of frequency communication. Communication is this. It's 2 frequencies. You have a frequency and the one you're communicating with has a frequency. They come together. You make a bridge. The frequencies merge. You understand each other. And the more you do this, the more of a feeling of love you will share with whoever you're communicating with. What happens is, because our templates have been twisted, the frequencies that are supposed to go this way within the dimension 1, 2, and 3 bodies, the physical, emotional, and mental, go this way. And they kind of a little bit of a link, enough where you can engage, but then there's all this other stuff that creates static and pushes on each other, and it builds up tension in the fields, and it replicates the pattern more and more and more. Men and women are supposed to get along with each other. In the ancient of days, before these distortions happened to our templates and to our consciousness, the only difference in having a male and female body was you needed to come into density. You needed to take on both. You couldn't fit all of you in one body, in one time vector. So you'd come in as gender twins. Now, with indigos, gender twins come into the same time vector, and they actually cycle together all the time, where they will follow the same timeline. Your twin will be on planet with you. Now, if they happen to die before you do, they'll hang out in the D4 frequencies, literally kind of like an angel hanging out waiting for you, that kind of thing. With the human imprint that has only 12 strands, they get a gender twin too. They have the other half of themselves in the opposite gender, but they don't always have the same time vector. Their time vectors will come together at a certain point in time when it's time for them to go up to the next level. So in their ascension cycles, they will meet, in time, they will meet their twins. But indigos, they're literally with you, because we come in that way. Now, it wasn't supposed to be with you to fight with you. We weren't supposed to, be fighting with each other all the time just because you're throwing one set of frequencies and I'm throwing another, and we're so polarized that we're blaming each other for it. That's what it comes out to be. No, you did this. No, you did this. No, you did this. Well, whose fault? Who started this anyway? You get in these loops of arguments or loops of emotional reactions that you don't know where the heck they're coming from. And some part of you sits back in there, and however many times you try to express your point. You can say it 5 different ways. You get to the point where you realize this person's just not going to understand me. And as soon as you realize that, you're dead. Okay? As soon as you realize that, you have put a big thought pattern out that says, we will never understand each other. All right? It feels futile after a while to deal with the conflicts that come up between people, not just between couples, but between you and your boss, or you and your mother, or you and your father. You will have the same issues over and over, and they'll take on different clothes. Okay, we thought we solved that, but the same power struggles coming out here. Power struggles are frequency struggles, and frequency struggles are created by distortions that are in the templates that are blocking the natural flow, because the natural condition of the hologram and of consciousness is flow, which is frequency harmonizing, which is love. That's why one of the little catchphrases of the New Age movement is, everything is love, it's all love. But they don't have a definition for what that means. So you kind of think, well, you mean that base chakra stuff where everybody's chasing each other around? Is that love? We don't even remember what love is here, because we've been taught so many distorted things about love. There were periods of time when the Anunnaki races had invaded this planet. There was a large period of time where they actually took over and they were the dominating force on surface Earth. And they set up models of civilization. It's called the Palladian-Orion model of cultural development. And it's the Antichristos model. It's built upon male dominance. It's built upon taking power from someone else. The value systems that we have in our hologram right now, or you could call them the devalue systems that we have in our hologram, where we are taught that there is a pecking order, that certain people are more important than others and therefore get more privilege and they have the right to control your power. The money system we're living with on this planet is not in divine right order. It's a control mechanism that was the same one that was on Nibiru thousands of years ago. That was a little gift given to our cultures. Once upon a time, there was free exchange. First of all, we had free energy systems because we had the knowledge of the Templar and we knew how to run the natural energy systems of the planet. There was always enough food. There was always enough. Everybody had a place. There were no homeless people in those situations. There was no having to kill yourself, so just hopefully by the time you're 30 you can afford to put a roof over your head, and maybe then you can get married because you might be able to help somebody else put a roof over theirs too. The pressure to just survive was not there because we all knew ourselves as a family and we all knew how to manifest. If we needed food to grow, we would simply talk to the seeds and communicate with their consciousness and ask them where the best place to plant them was. We'd talk to the earth and ask where the best place to be was. Where do I belong? Because I know there's a place that belongs with me, that I belong with, and it misses me as much as I miss it. We all had a piece of the template that belonged to us, that we had a right to be. Right now, we're living on a slave planet. I don't know if anybody's noticed, but that's the scary part. That's the real scary part. You think, slave planet? Huh? Did anybody notice that you can't just go and say, oh, it's pretty here. I'm going to pitch my tent here, and I'll build my little stick house here, and this is going to be mine. Good luck. Why? Because somebody else owns it already. Why? Because somebody decided there was a system, or they were going to carve the earth up in little pieces, even though it's a living body, and tell people that if you had enough money and power, you could have a piece of the earth, but if not, you don't belong here. You can be homeless. You can go live in a box under a bridge. And if you bug us, then we'll put you in jail. We'll take your freedom. We'll take your power. This is a prison planet. There is something horribly, horribly wrong with the things we have been taught to look at as normal. We have been taught to look at the way the political system works as normal, with the way the economic system looks. Oh, this is just normal. It's just the way it is. See, there's two ways. Normal is where you actually believe that this is okay. So you help to make it this way. So you participate in it and feel good about it. I'm doing my part. What are you doing your part in? If you're still stuck in a place where you think people are supposed to be in conflict with each other, and where you think it's all supposed to be a power struggle, and there's a pecking order, and as long as you're a good little person to the big person who has your power, then everything will be fine for you. You'll get along good in the hologram. Then there's we start to realize, oh my God, there's something wrong with this. The big thing that helps you to realize this is when you can't make money. Let's say you're born into a family that isn't rich, they're not even comfortable. You know, maybe, let's say that your mom lived under a bridge in a box. Now, you probably, at that point, didn't get to know your mom because somebody would have come and taken you away for your own good and put you in an institution of some sort to raise you safely because you were under a bridge in a box. Now, you start out with a situation of apparent lack, seeming that you are lacking. You grow up with a sense of need, of really, really needing to fix it, because all the things that you would have liked to have felt as a little baby, the comfort, the safety, the being okay and being loved, weren't there, particularly once you started in the school experience. Especially if somebody stuck you in the school with kids who had nice clothes and all you had were rags, or kids who had nice houses and you had to go home to a trailer. All of a sudden, you found that you weren't lovable, and it hurts. You weren't lovable because the people around you were taught to judge you on what you had rather than what you were. And indigos especially are extremely sensitive to this kind of thing. They feel that judgment even if the mental body can't see it. They feel it. They know, you're not loving me. You're not, indigos tend to come in with their hearts open. Yeah, we're all here and, we know each other and you don't remember me, do you? Oh, and it gets to be a very, very painful experience. We get to know lack, and then we get a drive to fix it. That's where we become, that's where we become involved with career pursuit. I will develop myself. I will master this. I'll show, at least myself, that I'm worth something, because you end up feeling like you are worthless. There's no such thing as worthless in God's universe. Whose universe are we in? Because here, People walk around feeling like they're worthless because they don't have this, they're not enough this, they're not enough this. Worthless is a condition of being conned into not recognizing yourself as a face of source. Our belief systems here, there's a very intimate, actually they've been sleeping together for many years, the religious doctrine establishments and the political establishments and the economic establishments. It's been like a flaming threesome for thousands of years here, and it's not been based on morality at all. They're co-conspiring with each other, and the sad part is, who's manifesting this hologram? Humans. Why? Because they're using distorted thought patterns to amplify the distortions that are already in their templates to the point where they're turning themselves into something that's not even human. Humans have heart, they have emotional bodies, and they have compassion. That is the human imprint. We're losing those qualities because we have been literally raising ourselves on a hologram that was given to us by another race who has some real problems, and we have progressively allowed that to become the dominant force on our planet. We are living in a prison planet where we are the little manufacturing machines for the Anunnaki model. And the Dracs had to get in there too. So there's actually the draconian version. Some of the stuff that we're dealing with is draconian, and some of it is Anunnaki. Where do the humans fit in here? Don't we even live here anymore? Or are we just the little like bio machines that manufacture the hologram for them? That's what it's come out to be. It's like, I didn't watch the whole Matrix movie, but for a while the Matrix movie was very popular. I saw parts of it, and at one point, I don't even remember the point, it got to me so bad where I had to leave. Because it showed a concept so clearly. This is what's been going on here. We're in the Matrix. And when you first start to get out of the Matrix and see it, you go, oh, it couldn't be that bad, could it? It is, but that's a relative term. If you don't surrender your power to it, it's not bad. It's something that needs healing. And you can be a healing influence. You start to be a healing influence when you start to learn what your power is. If we know our power is thought, that's another little trick to the New Age teachings. Oh, thoughts are things. Your power is thought. Just do this. All right. My power is thought. My thoughts are power. My thoughts are, where are my thoughts? What do my thoughts do? How do I use this power? Okay? Then nobody's telling you what your thoughts are made of, what they become, what they do. First, we need to understand what they are and how they manufacture the hologram. Then there's a whole long series of healings that need to take place where we start to realize, what does this set of words project out here? Okay? We have been using language, we've been taught to use language in a way that it creates the negative, it creates the lower frequency pattern in the projection, and it creates polarity, so the lower and the higher can't come together. What we use as our belief system affects our emotional bodies totally. The emotional body is the lower strand. The higher strand communicates down the pattern to the lower strand and affects what the lower strand does. So it means mental body sends its message down to the emotional body, and the emotional body will transmit that feeling and that sensation, that pattern. If you're using your minds in a way, let's say you can wake up and say, oh, here I am again, have to go to work. Yeah, great day we're having. I really don't like my hologram, you know? You'll project more of the same. You need to acknowledge the feeling that, okay, I feel a disresonance here. I'm the creator. I have the power. I will change this now. And sometimes things will change and I didn't even do anything on this level. You go, oh, I'm getting good. I missed myself fixing it, but I did. You know, there's a whole thing that I would love to be able to say when we leave here that you'll be able to exactly know how to project your thoughts to get exactly what you want. I can tell you what your thoughts are and what they do, and I can give you some suggestions as to how we begin the process of learning to think in ways that create the manifestations we want. But it's not a process that happens overnight. It's a process of first learning to catch your thoughts, realizing what am I allowing to be my template right now, and realizing you have the ability to change it. Now, thoughts are interesting because they're multi-level. The part that moves through you here as the kind of random ones that come through and then they go someplace, they come up from someplace else. Thoughts are part of idea organizations that are larger groups of thoughts, that are part of belief organizations that are literally in the subconscious and in the body pattern. We were seated in ancient times with distorted belief patterns ever since Atlantis, 9558 BC, was when the big drama of the flood was staged, when the great cleaning came down so we wouldn't have our history. We were fed, hand-fed, various versions of creation myths since that time that were intended to create certain things in the hologram and in our emotional bodies. These imprints get passed down to our children, generation after generation. We've carried the same distortions with us. We were taught disempowering concepts of gods were external things. We were taught that the environment was a harsh place, therefore you needed protection against it. Now, they didn't teach us to harmonize with it, to love it. They taught us to fear it. We have been working on fear for thousands of years. Excuse me. There is a healing process that goes. The first part of that healing begins in recognizing, oh my God, I'm the manifester. Really? I really, really am. I've been thinking God was doing it all this time. Because most people are taught God did it, right? They're taught, and God's somebody other than you, right? God's out there someplace sitting on a throne with a big white beard maybe. But God made this world. God created the heavens and earth. And you have to be nice to God, or the wrath of God will come down on you. What they forgot to tell you in the whole statement was that you are the God that's doing this in your hologram. Because you are at one with Source, you are a piece of Source manifest. You are God that's been tricked into thinking you're not, and that the God that holds your power is out there someplace else. There is a God that we are all faces of, that exists as a massive consciousness and intelligence that's far beyond what any of us could fit in a body here. It doesn't mean that you can express all of your godness in one form. If you could, there'd only be one person. God wanted to express, so God expressed as the universe. So there's a part of you that is God, that is the planet itself, that is the galaxy itself. So it's not where, oh, I'm God, so I can be really arrogant and like push people around and tell them what to do because I manifest things. That's not what it means to say I am God. But it's to acknowledge that there's this part of you that always has that level of power. And when you start to realize that, you start to realize, what have you been taught to do when you wanted to be spiritual for the last number of thousands of years? Pray to God out there. But if God's in you, what are you doing? You're giving your power to your hologram, to some fictitious character out there that you don't know who it is, but you feel totally separate from it. So you feel very, very small, very powerless. Like you have to really behave. And of course, along with that paradigm of belief that we were fed, we have to behave in exactly certain ways. And if we behave any different than that, we go to hell. That's one of those other hypothetical places. I think we are in it. If you believe you are powerless and you're walking around in a space that there's some external God that did this to you, and you don't even know what this God expects of you, so you don't even know how to be good, because there's so many versions of what God expects, that is hell. You're living a walk in hell that you're manufacturing and you don't even know it. And you have the power to change it, but because you've been tricked into believing that you're not the manifester, you feel utterly powerless, that your world is coming at you. And what it usually does is creates a power of subservience, where if you can just figure out how to survive comfortably enough and compensate for the fact that you're terrified here because you don't understand what's going on, because a part of you knows that you're the manifester, and the other part is tied up in the fear patterns that think everything else is outside of your self-control and your power. We have a lot of healing that needs to be done, and it's a personal thing, because we all come through with different beliefs and different effects, like different paradigms that have affected us, belief paradigms that have affected us. Our beliefs are... Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask you something that we've been seeing a lot, and I'd love to hear your response on it.
Okay.
There is mechanisms that get activated when the DNA reaches a certain point that kick up then a belief structure that's hooked in by a fear place in our own emotional bodies. Mm-hmm. So, for example, I can just speak to Joseph and I. When we got deeper and deeper in love, she's working on the same piece right now. When we got deeper and deeper in love, there was a certain frequency we moved into that kicked up, I can't trust love. Mm-hmm. And then but it was kicked by a machine, and that was really bizarre. And when we finally, the Yanni came and showed us how to remove and neutralize the mechanism, then the whole hologram shifted, and we started to trust each other because the projection shifted. But it was a mental, emotional piece that was hooked into the DNA.
It's an implant. What she was referring to, she was saying that they've noticed, they work with healing energies a lot, and they've noticed that there was a time where they hit a certain frequency in some of their work, and there were these these like little mechanics in the DNA templates that they were working with that were throwing out, as soon as you would hit a certain vibration where, say, love would start to open in you, it would reverse itself and turn into fear of love. Oh, I can't. And mistrust, where as soon as you got close to the thing that would have expanded you, it shifts into the reverse, and you get pushed away from it. And it's coming from your own template. And she said that they were aware that there were little, she called them machines or mechanics that were in the DNA that were actually doing this. This is very true. They're implants that were implanted in the planet's grids. They're actually still in the planet's grids. All right? They're crystalline implants. Now, crystal technologies are advanced technologies because crystals like quartz and selenite have the ability to hold for very long periods of time patterns of energy that you project into them, scalar patterns. They're scalar holders, transmitters, and receivers. So if you want to come into a planet and start messing with the belief systems of people, you leave little belief crystals around. You project a certain pattern of energy that holds certain ideas that would translate into the hologram or into words to mean this or into pictures to mean this. If you want to hijack a species, you put these crystal plant implants into their planetary shields, because the planetary shields and the persons share energy all the time. Energy comes in from the galactic spectrum, comes into the planet, circulates through the planet, circulates through all the life forms on the planet. So we literally have the distortions of our DNA, that they're not just distortions we picked up from ourselves and our other time vectors. The distortions that are continually remanifesting in our bodies. You could get clear right now. You could be like taken to a place where none of this is happening. As soon as you're brought back in and put your feet on this earth, you've got an implant again.
And it makes it about the other person. The play.
Oh yeah, it throws it out as if it's the hologram's fault, whoever the hologram is, right?
You separate from the stimulus that's creating the DNA activation, and that's the thing we saw, is the person that was activating you, it will make you push away from them, these implants. So the one place where you're going to get the most expansion, it makes you resistant.
What it has to do with actually is, now when we talk about DNA, this is kind of like advanced stuff because we haven't talked too much about yet how the DNA factors in manufacturing the hologram and what your growth process is. Because basically you go through a series of frequencies. If every frequency band, just the way dimensions are structured, has 12 sub-frequency bands, and every one of your DNA strands corresponds directly to one of those dimensional bands, that means you would have 12 sub-frequency template, parts of your template. Then progressively, this is how you actually see time, that it gets projected out. You would say you have 12 codes in one DNA strand, and that whole strand holds the whole content of your experience that will be projected out in dimension 1. All right? When you hit the first little code with frequency, it throws the hologram out. Okay? The hologram throws energy back at you that hits the next code. It throws a hologram out. The second code throws a hologram out, and the first one comes back in. There's this process of your DNA is literally manufacturing piece by piece every moment to get you to have the experience from moving from one moment to be able to watch the clock hand move a minute. You've actually gone through numerous ones of these cycles where one code in the DNA got stimulated by frequency, which starts when you do fetal integration. This is where your growth process starts. It throws out the hologram throws energy back at you. And it gets into particles. I'm going to talk about how this works with particles. When we begin to understand this, it makes more sense when we start to say, well, where are implants? Where do they fit into this? Because they change that natural cycle of how it's supposed to work with humans. Humans have a really neat manifestation process. They come into fetal integration here in density 1, but they do it simultaneously. When you were born at the same time in all of your time vectors. Because time is simultaneous. Your creation point and your leaving point are actually all the same point, but you'll see them sequenced and stretched out as if they were separate from each other. Now, when you come into fetal integration, all the fetal integration points where all your other cells and other time vectors came in, including the ones in density 2 and density 3 and density 4, they all come in to manifestation. That sets in motion the holographic program. Soon as your energy, which is like a consciousness, we call it the holographic beam, comes in from the primal sound fields, turns into light, and hits the templates, the dormant scalar templates that are the dimensional field here, you start to get manufacture of your hologram. You will get your first code in your D1 strand will project its thing out and turn around. It's really a frequency. One of your Myon units, coming out, hits the unified field of Myon units, which makes it reverse its polarity. It becomes a Dion unit that is a transmitter, and it throws its information back at you. And you, as a Myon consciousness in this universe, see it as a hologram. It has to do, too, with the fact that when you flash on into manifestation, you have energy fields around you that are spherical shaped, which bend light in a certain way. You're carrying with you your holographic screen in your auric field. When you flash on into consciousness, see, you're dormant. You're fully awake and aware and at one with Source between every moment. When you manifest, what happens is you, as consciousness, temporarily turn off as consciousness and turn on as hologram. And then when you move to the next moment point, you turn off there, go back into being fully at one with Source, and then project out again. But it happens so fast that at this point, we're not seeing the points where our consciousness turns the other direction. Our consciousness is doing this. It's turning toward manifestation and seeing itself and putting itself in as the hologram, then reversing its polarity, turning around, and going back into expansion as Source, and contracting back down and expanding out this way, and then turning around this way. We're all standing still. Okay? You know, when you finally get what's happening, you go, what do I do with it? You know what I mean? They were explaining this to me this morning, where they're explaining how the thoughts, the Mayans and Dions, which we'll talk about more, because right now Mayans, Dions, and Trions are kind of like new words, right? When we start to see what they create, you'll go, oh my goodness, wow, we're creating the subatomic particle base. Oh my God, we're creating the base of the hologram every time we breathe, basically. And come out as a consciousness. You are projecting your consciousness out into the unified field. That sets whatever's in your template starts to, you literally project it out. And the way it works is you have over here on this side, as far as like there's particle and antiparticle universes, we're in the particum universe, which is considered the particle universe. Here, we are Mayan consciousness. So we are our templates. Our self is in the form of a Mayan field of particles, right? Particulates, they call them. They're small ion particles. We merge with the larger Mayan field of the universal structure, the dimensional structure. We come in, and our Mayans intersect with the larger Mayans that have more energy and more thrust than our smaller templates do. The larger thrust Mayans, it's like Mayans have the negative charge. You put negative and negative together. It creates a repulsion, a resistance, and because the planetary template is larger than ours, than our small individual ones, it reverses our Mayan, making it a Dion, which means the negative charge. I'm not saying negative bad thought. I'm saying the negative charge of our self here, our consciousness here, as it intersects with the negative field. The negative field is bigger than our little negative self. It flips us into an electrical expression and then throws the electricity back toward us in the template. And that's where we see it. We're seeing that electricity being thrown back. And that triggers the next part of us to manifest. And what you're doing is progressively, each strand of your DNA is going, okay, you had strand 1. There's a process of, they call it initiation, activation, and consummation. This is what DNA strands do, and this is how your hologram is manufactured. Initiation is when the frequency first starts to hit a code, let's say one little tiny Kelon code in one strand of your DNA. Frequency hits that. The frequency is your holographic beam coming through from Source, your consciousness. Hits that. That code initiates. It starts to vibrate, right? It starts to be sound. It starts to vibrate. Now, activation happens when it starts to vibrate enough where it hits a critical mass. Now, it's going to vibrate, and it's going to pull more vibration that's like it toward itself, so it's going to become a louder sound pattern, right? Once it gets to a critical mass, that's when it activates. And that's when the information starts to get ready to, it's like getting ready to birth that baby. It's going to pop out into manifestation. It activates. And then it pushes itself out into activation, into your hologram. That moment point bursts into the hologram. And it has a certain set of vibrations that it's made out of. And these are the vibrations you're seeing as your hologram point. Like this is your point of focus, your hologram. Now, when That got projected out and sent electrical frequency back to you in the form of dyons. They hit the next little code and send it singing. The next, right next to it, if you have a DNA strand that has one code here, you just pop that moment point. There's one here that's not awake yet. As soon as you pop that moment point throws vibration back, hits that one, starts it to singing, it initiates. Now, we call the consummation point when you have initiation starts to vibrate, activation when it starts to hit a critical mass of vibration and starts to run itself into the hologram. Consummation is when it's fully spent in the hologram. When whatever that pattern was, from A to Z, you've got that part of your hologram has done. That's the point where the picture changes. Okay? That's the point where enough frequency was sent back to the next moment point, it's initiated, and it's getting ready to activate. As the next moment point is getting ready to project out, the other one has consummated and is drawing back in, which means it's going. What you're seeing is what we talked about, vibration and oscillation, turning on and off of the scalar units. When you activate, the scalar unit goes on and gives you the image, the holographic image. All right. When it goes back to vibration, it turns off. But when this one's turning off, the next one's turning on. So you get a continual flow of seeing a light field with its hologram in it. Well, really, it's turning on, off, but in such a sequence that you can't tell there was a changeover. In that changeover, it's literally not just your hologram that's flashing on and off. It's you. Your whole body is being reborn between every second. You go back to source between every moment point. And think how short a moment is. I mean, science has got it down where they can find nanoseconds and those kind of things, billionths of a second and things like that. This is happening so rapidly. The vibration is in such a way that if you take it into what time looks like here, it's so rapid we don't see the transition point. So it seems like the hologram is somebody else's world that somebody created and put us here. We're putting ourselves in the hologram every moment, every breath we take. Our breathing rhythms show us what this is about. The inhaling and the exhaling process has to do with literally the manifest consciousness in the body consciousness itself is showing you the energy exchange. Is showing you that you come in to vibration and then express out into oscillation. This is what's happening when you breathe. Well, the energy that's really being, the first level of breathing, is the fact that you have your template turning on in the hologram. And this is where the DNA strands, they initiate, they activate, and then they consummate when the next one is activating. So there's this communication of frequency all the way up the chain. Now what this does is progressively turn on portions of your template. You came in with a template that you wanted to experience in manifestation. That's the you that you call your whole self. It contains the information that you wanted to experience in your hologram. Progressively, when you go through, let's say, strand 1, the information you had in your strand 1 template, that will progressively bring more of the unified field into you. Even though the other one flashed off, where'd it go? It came back to you. Okay? So your past, you take it with you all the time. You're manufacturing past, present, and future actually with you all the time because the same thing is coming from the top down, from your higher dimensions of self. They're doing the same thing. Now, we're in a situation where we're dragging our past imprints and the distortions from our lower strand templates, continually projecting them into the future. We've created a loop in time for ourselves where we're stuck in a level of evolution that we weren't intended to be. Now, what is evolution in terms of what is growth? What is growth in the hologram? How does it occur? It has to do with climbing the dimensional scale in your template. You come in with a template and you progressively activate it. It means you activate more. You pull in frequency from the unified field and you activate your template, you project out your hologram, but you have still in you now that frequency from the unified field that expands your pattern a little bigger. Then you do the same exchange. As you're projecting out and the energy is being sent out to your hologram, that comes back in as the next one goes out, you're accreting frequency, pulling it into your template, and it's expanding your form, and it expands your hologram. That is what the growth process is, even from a fetus up to a person who can be born into an independent body. Birth is a critical mass issue. When the fetus grows into a baby inside the mother's body and hits a critical mass where it can interact directly with the unified field around it, that's when birth happens. That's what triggers birth. And the baby grows from a fetus because it starts as soon as conception. This is before the soul is in it. The pattern itself that came part of the mother's consciousness, part of the father's consciousness, formed that baby body. It doesn't have its own soul yet, but even with just those pieces of the mother and father's consciousness put together, it starts to accrete frequency, pull in frequency, and it starts to see its D1 experience. Now that's only one-dimensional experience. Okay, we see three-dimensional. As soon as we're born, we see 3D. That's because while we're gestating in the womb, we're first of all expanding our D1 template. We start to get the molecular cellular consciousness. Then we go into the D2 template, where we start to experience sensation as the second strand, and the qualities of the emotional body come. Thought forms become the perception of a child that's developing, like probably by about 3 months gestation you would have in the womb. You would have going into D2 activation. Birth happens when you get halfway through the third strand in this time frame. You get halfway through the third strand, the baby body has the ability to start directly interacting without the mother's field, serving as the intermediary frequency feeder. It can directly interact with pulling frequency from the unified field around it, from the timeline around it. You basically, a baby, what it does is, before you can come in as a soul, your parents have to grow a baby body for you that, first of all, gets the timeline rhythms up to a certain point where they can begin to sustain. Then you can put your consciousness in. You adopt the timeline rhythms that you got from the pattern your parents had set. That's called fetal integration. Then you and the timeline and the parts of yourself that are brand new because you just inherited them from your parents, you have to assimilate the parts of your parents' consciousness that weren't yours to begin with. Now you have a bit more of yourself, and eventually you'll hit critical mass where it is time for you to become an independent being here. This is the process. So we're expanding the form as we go. Just like when we go and make the transition and we activate strands 4, 5, and 6 to make our shift to density 2, our bodies are 7 to 12 feet tall there. Right? Under a microscope, they have lots more chromosomes. Humans are supposed to have 144 chromosomes. We have like 46 that they've identified, and I think monkeys have 48. Crayfish have like 100 and something. There's some ridiculous chromosome numbers happening here. All right? So all of the things, as far as the accretion process, this is the accretion process. Growth is the accretion process. You're pulling in frequency and making it yours. Now, expanding back into Godhood means you're absorbing the universe until it's all inside of you again. That's really what it is.
It's like a blob.
Yeah, but it's a happy blob, and it's done with love, right? So you're part of the unified field when you're in it. It's like, it's hard to describe because we're stuck in a linear thing of time, but all of this is a breathing rhythm of consciousness simply sitting in one place, expanding and flashing on. And even expansion is a tricky term because expansion implies movement, right, this way, going from where your space is to a bigger space. We're not even doing that. We're sitting in the universe, in the mind of God, as scalar wave units that stand still as far as they don't move from here to here, they don't dance, they just turn on and off. They go from vibration to oscillation. And through that process, the whole hologram of being able to see yourself out here in a separate body, in individuation, in externalization, is turned on. Well, really, we're all just in the theater. We're little lights that are sitting in the theater and going to sleep and waking up and going to sleep and waking up. That is the nature of the hologram. And it is so strange when the mental body starts to try to wrangle with that. It's like going into the bull ring and trying to get that bull by the horns and take it down so you're going to win, right? And the thing is charging at you. Where do I go? Where do I go? Dodge the bull for a while until you can figure out what angle to grab the horns. And you don't want to hurt the bull. You just want to grab the horns and very gently say, "Can we be friends, please?" The bull is the illusion coming at you. Because at this point, we're not dealing with all of our facilities. We used to be fully aware. We're supposed to be aware of our body consciousness. We're supposed to be aware of, I wouldn't say of our, I would say of ourselves as our body consciousness, of ourselves as our elemental consciousness. This was all who we were. If you identified who we are, it wasn't just the person you see in the mirror when you look at the hologram. You knew yourself as your molecules, you knew yourself as your elements, your water elements, you knew yourself as the 3D elements here, you knew yourself as the whole hologram. And you got a kick out of it. Because it's like a bunch of us literally sitting, manifesting a hologram together, while we're all just sitting back in the theater, And there's the stage up there. So we're going to like project our beams up. Okay, guys, 1, 2, 3, all at once. Here we go. It's on. Right? That is really what the consciousness is doing behind the hologram. But unfortunately, the part of it's getting stuck in the hologram. Where it gets stuck in the hologram, it doesn't know how to shut back off. It's getting stuck in oscillation instead of being able to return to vibration so it can continue its natural process. This is because the templates are damaged where they're supposed to do that very neatly sequenced project out, draw back, project out, draw back. They're supposed to do that. There's twists in the template that create polarization where project out, draw back, project out, draw back, hold it there, hold it there, hold it there, draw back. It's like, it throws the rhythm off. It's like a square dance where people are tripping over each other. That's what happened. That's what's going on in our DNA templates. The remedy to that is working with Merkaba, because our templates, those little scalar waves, those little tiny billions and billions of scalar waves that turn on and off, are Merkaba fields. We have them here and we have them in our doubles, because we do have an antiparticle double self, and when you put the two together, you have your inner Earth self. All right, so if you want to get to inner Earth, you have to go find your other half and bring it together. You have half of the Merkaba vehicle. If you look at a Merkaba vehicle in symbolic terms as two triangles, one pointed up, one pointed down, you have one half, and the other part of you that's in the antiparticle universe has the other half. When you bring those two triangles together, the one up one and the one down one, you form a Merkaba field, which is a counter-rotating spiral of electromagnetic energy that literally controls angular rotation of particle spin when the flash-on happens. The process of getting free is bringing together the portions of your identity. But right now, we have a heck of a job before us, because in our hologram, we have been repeatedly manifesting distortion patterns from what would be the past. The past is what was in your strands 1, 2, and 3. If you're in strand 4 now, if you're in fourth dimensional consciousness, which we all are moving into at this point, we have fourth DNA strand activation. We're seeing the 3D as our, like, one dimension below is the hologram that we're seeing physically. But if we have not transmuted all of the things from strand 1 and from strand 2, the dimension 1 experience that we move through to get there, the dimension 2 experience, it is actually coming in as a backdrop that's below. It won't be pictures in your hologram. It will be undercurrents of energy that are dragging your energy around in the hologram. That's what's happening. So we have a subconscious to clear by healing our strands 1, 2, and 3, and by using the outside Merkaba field, and by using the Maharada D12 current, which has the ability to reset the natural pattern for any frequency it intersects below itself. It's the strongest, besides the primal light fields, it is the strongest. The Maharada D12 current has the divine blueprint of the entire dimensional scale in it. So if you have at dimension 2 in your second strand template distortions that are there that are creating this undercurrent in your hologram, if you run the Maharada current on a regular basis, it will clear them. It will do that on each level. This is why we use the Kathara healing system. It was made for that. It's a healing system to get the Maharada D12 current activated in the body so the body can begin to heal, so the hologram can begin to heal. There's the old saying, healers heal thyself. There's a lot of people, it's kind of funny, a little thing about healing. If you have the urge that you want to heal other people, you're telling yourself something. Okay? Like me, I'm not really a healer, I'm an informer. I'm telling myself something. What I'm telling myself is that I need to inform myself. If you have that real, just really want to help people, really want to heal people kind of thing, the people that you will draw to you are responding to those distortion patterns that are in your lower strands. You will manufacture in your hologram clients that have the parts of you need to fix, the parts of you that are jammed up. And the problems they have are exactly what the pattern is. You can tell what you need to heal by who comes to you for what. Because each one of them is showing you something in your pattern. And it goes the same for them. What you are to them. Now remember, they're doing a hologram too, right? You are the part of themselves that knows how to fix it. Okay? So, we each have the healer and what needs to be healed inside of ourselves. When you put it in the hologram, there's nothing that happens by chance. That is absolute truth. It's not chance. It's manufacture. That doesn't mean it means that you intended to manufacture something. There are happy accidents and sometimes not quite happy accidents where energy patterns get combined in a certain way and they don't come out to be what they were intended to be. But nothing can come into your life that is not in your template. So if there are things coming into your life that you don't like Anunnaki and spaceships that want to take over the planet, that means there's something in your template that would put you in a hologram that would have that problem. This is where we get into our race and species karmic imprint, our template imprint, where the relationship with the Anunnaki and Draconian races is part of the natural history that is the template for this race. And it will affect all of us, and it is affecting all of us, whether or not we want to acknowledge it. If we choose instead, if the real issue is, in our templates, we have this conflict that needed healing between us and these other two races, but if we decide to believe something else instead, what we do is we create a hologram, a thought form, and make an overlay over the reality. So not only are you not being able to see what the reality was, you're not being able to access it, to heal it, because you have an overlay that's twisting stuff even more. The Anunnaki have tried to do this. The thoughts that they are seeding here and that they are getting channels to activate here now, so it will consummate soon and come out so they can come, they are intentionally creating overlays on our templates because they need us to run Anunnaki coding into the planetary Templar so they have the ability with their biology to interact directly with Earth. They can interact with Nibiru, but they don't have the coding of Earth's template. They are trying to hijack our planet by hijacking us, and once they get the planet, we're not useful to them. This is an old conflict. We all carry it, which will bring to us certain experiences. Now, what people are starting to live now is they're starting to walk the Atlantean karma. Okay, we're in a mass time period where the stuff that was put in our templates through our experience in the Atlantean time vectors is now activating and coming back into our hologram. The Atlantean karma stuff was stored in, we call it karma, but it's really the Atlantean pattern, which goes with the part of your consciousness that's manifest in the time periods that we would call the Atlantean period, which ran from about 50,000 BC to 9,558 BC. There was a certain point in time. Now they were dormant in our template, right? The memory of them were dormant in our template. Because if you don't clear everything the first time you run through it, you go back to number one, which means you go back to another fetal body, you incarnate into it, you climb up the scale, if you can transmute it, you get out. You get healed, you take the body with you and leave. We're seeing the Atlantean karma manifest right now on a mass level because it's been in our templates and we've been cycling with it for a very long time. We have not cleared it, so it is coming up. When I've done healing work recently, in the last 2 years, they started to really come through. There are these bizarre configurations that you can see with the D4 vision. They look like shackles and chains. They look like they're made out of etheric metal, like iron, things around people's necks, like chastity belts, horrible things sticking in chakras, and people are getting, and they affect you physically. You get physical manifestations there. The Atlantean karma is starting to literally manifest in the hologram. It starts with the body. See, first, before something comes out here, its first stage, when it first activates, it goes here, in you, inside you. Then it progressively moves away from where your consciousness is. There's your body. It moves out from you. Okay? So the first stage of the Atlantean karma isn't seeing it here, where there's going to be Anunnaki on the planet and spaceships flying in the sky. First, it's having contact with things that aren't physical yet in our experience, which the channels are doing, and which the people who experience abductions are doing. Progressively, that builds up. The Atlantean karmic imprint comes up more. It's going to move from inside of us, where we start to get the blockages, where females start to have problems with the organs down here because there were horrible things done to females in those days because they were trying to control the breeding. Where males have equally horrible experiences, and indigos have probably very sad ones because we were hunted in Atlantis. We were the Magi Grail lines there. We carried the sacred information, and we were the ones responsible for the Templar in a period of time where we were attacked. And we were all pushed up to a place called Lohas Atlantis. We were all holed up there. It was the only safe ground left because they literally took over the entire Atlantean continent. Lohas Atlantis is the areas now called Ireland and England. Ireland, England, Scotland, and Wales. That was the upper tip of the Atlantean continent. And we were all holed up there for a long time. And then we got invaded there. The Ice Age that made Ireland all under ice and all that area under ice was done on purpose. It was done to force us out. And we had to go down. We ended up in the areas of Italy. It was called Ionia. And in Ionia, then they came in and the Dracs took over there. So the indigos, as their Atlantean karma comes up, this is why they're finding weird experiences happening. They're having, UFOs. They didn't even believe in UFOs, but all of a sudden they're having abduction experiences, like somebody's chasing them, somebody's after them. Somebody else after them. Because the Atlantean karma is coming back up. It's manufacturing the hologram again. The same people are back for another redo of the game. The same ones that were doing whatever to you last time are still here with you. Now, they're coming back into your hologram. There's one little twist that really irks me. Some religious systems are teaching this when they deal with karma, that, if you have bad karma now, because you were bad in the other time, and now you're experiencing the other shoe. 90% of the time that is not true. 90% of the time you're repeating the same pattern. If you're the victim this time, it's because you were for the last 20 times. Okay? Now, there's always a relationship between the victim-victimizer role. There's something you're doing to draw victimizers to you. So you're still responsible for the hologram. But there's a twist that's being taught in the karmic things that are telling you that you deserve to be treated bad because obviously you were horrible to somebody in another life. Well, you're supposed to accept the fact that this is okay and I'm just going to have a lousy life and hopefully that'll be enough to pay for it. That's not what's happening. When the Atlantean karma is stored in strand 3 because of its placement in the planetary time cycles. That is where that imprint would be stored. We would have our Lemurian karma stored in strand 2. That would be, and that's what's coming up through the emotional body. Because of the time periods when those races were seeded here, they correspond to certain vibration points in our strands. So when you go into emotional body clearing, you're starting to clear the templates of yourself that's in those time periods in Lemuria, strand 2, and Atlantis, strand 3. Now, why are we seeing Atlantean karma? Because we're all going into strand 4 activation. Now, before activation, initiation happens first. It starts to vibrate. Strand 4 is starting to vibrate now. Okay, it's not ready to project its hologram out quite yet. What we've been seeing as solid as our hologram is what was contained in strand 3. We initiated our strand 3. Strand 3 has been activating, so we have been beginning to see the earlier parts of strand 3 karma as solid. As our strand 4 activates or begins its initiation process, we will progressively see the upper bands of our D3 strand imprint as the hologram. That's what's activating and consummating. As strand 4 initiates, you will have the activation and consummation cycle on the one below it happening. That's why you will see you'll see manifest what is one dimension below your station of consciousness. If your consciousness is beginning the initiation into dimension 4, you will be seeing the fulfillment cycle of the strand 3 content. And that's where the Atlantean karma is. We're getting ready to see the grand hurrah at the end period of the Atlantean karma, which was a takeover that changed the course of what history was supposed to be here. So right now it's inside. People are starting to get implants coming up where you look at their field. Healers are really busy these days because there's all sorts of stuff popping up in people's fields when you start to do like the outer body, there's certain types of healing that involve being able to see implants in the fields and removing them. They're coming up all the time now. The planet itself is moving through. It's a repeat of what was stored in its third grid. Okay, the planet has what are equivalent to DNA strands. All right, they're not DNA strands; they're energy template strands. Planet is purging the rest of what's in its third strand, and the grand hurrah in its third strand is the Atlantean issue, which brings the Anunnaki races back, and it brings the Zeta races back, and it brings them all back. So.
Portions of the biology that we went through is also being experienced on the planet.
Yeah.
All the chemical and DNA cloning manipulations and now the genetically modified food.
Yep.
All reconnecting to the Atlantean manipulation of genetics.
Very much. And what they did, one of the things they did in the Atlantean manipulation of genetics was they knew that the stuff that people have to eat progressively alters their template. There are foods that would sustain your ability to hold higher strand activation, that would sustain the integrity of your template. And then there were foods that would definitely take it down and literally mutate your template. There were foods created and other foods destroyed during the Atlantean periods where there were weather control devices that were used to create droughts and to create certain non-organic conditions where groups of people, guess who? The Indigos, because they were after us because we could stop them if we were able to mobilize, where they would create conditions where no food was available except what the Atlantean civilizations had to offer, which was altered in a way that it held the imprint. They brought plants here, they brought animals here from Nibiru. They have the Nibiruan imprint in them. This place has been seeded within life forms that were not organic here. Some of them are organic, but others were seeded here to make a critical mass first in the Earth's template of the Nibiru and Anunnaki template. It was, we had our memory wiped out, and then we had a few ice ages thrown down on our heads. Basically, the last one that I think pulled out by 15,000 BC, it started to recede or something like that. The one down in that period, which was earlier, that had to do with earlier Atlantean messes, we were put into a situation where there's nothing left except to consume the things that were around us. Right now, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between an Anunnaki plant, a draconian plant, or an organically human or Christos plant. It's not just human plant, but it's Christos. We're dealing with Christos versus non-Christos patterns, and they go not just in human life, just in human DNA. Everything on the planet fits into one of those categories. It doesn't mean it's bad. All right? It means that there are distortions in its template that do not allow it to hold higher frequency, and therefore it is on a cycle that will lead to its own implosion and turn back to space dust instead of lead to its own ascension and fulfillment of becoming one and conscious with Source. Right now, most of our foodstuffs are Anunnaki or draconian. We keep putting their templates into our bodies. They're becoming a part of us that way. This started in Atlantis, and it has been progressively proceeding. Now, with the genetically engineered foods, it's not only that on the organic level that's being put back. There are forms of energy, radiation that have to do with the radiated foods. There are forms of combining genetic elements that are not meant to be done. What they're trying to do is get us to a point of a common foodstuff, which is a fully manufactured foodstuff, where first of all, it is known that as we proceed through these things, they're aiming for Phantom Earth. If they can't have this one, they're going to try to take as much of the population with them as they can. They know that foodstuff is going to be very hard to come by after certain things take place in the Phantom Earth time vector. So they're trying to create what will be an easily, a nutrient pill kind of thing that at least will keep people alive. The only reason they want certain people alive is to run the Templar for them as slaves. They need our coding, and they want to be the dominators. We're in the middle of an amazing mess, and if it wasn't for the fact that we have power, and our power is love and healing, it could be something to get really upset about. But it's not worth getting really upset about. First of all, that will attach you to its negative outcome, which you don't need to see. But realizing the degree to which this hologram has been a part of the hologram that has to do with these other races, it's pretty amazing. Right down to the plants that are on our body. It's kind of interesting. It opens up a whole new thing of, wow, I wonder if that's a Christos tree, or if it's not a Christos tree. Is it draconian? Is it Anunnaki? There's a whole bunch of other races too that carry, versions of the coding. And you start to realize you will have some plants, some animals, and some chemicals and some molecules of things that resonate much better with you, and other things that will make you sick. I have an allergy to fur, which is bizarre. I love fuzzy kitties and things like that, but all through my childhood I had an allergy. Allergies are telling you something. There's something in your template that's not compatible with the template in the other thing. Now you can harmonize that sometimes. You can put a chemical in between to pretend it's harmonizing it sometimes, but you're not fixing the problem, which is two energy fields are competing with each other and they're creating backflow into your field. So when we get back into the hologram, I want to talk to you about go back to myons, dions, and trions, because these are important. If we can get the fact that we are projecting this hologram out through the initiation, activation, and consummation of DNA strands, is that simple. As one initiates, it starts to vibrate, releases a sound tone. That sound tone connects with, in the unified field, more sound tones that are like it, builds up a charge enough to where it can flash on and turn into a light form. So it goes from sound to light. It goes from miasmic state to diasmic state. That's when it's activating. That's when you're walking your hologram. That's what it means by walking your karma. Karma is not just from back then, It's continually created now. So if we can realize the initiation, activation, consummation of DNA strands is the process by which you manufacture a hologram, then you get into, well, what exactly is it doing? How does it get to be that physical stuff that we see out there and the scientists can rip apart under microscopes and identify and label? How does it go from that stage? It has to do with ionic particulates. When we hit the stage of initiation in the activation of in the activation of the hologram, when you first have your consciousness hitting a part of your dimensionalized template, say one piece of your D1 template, your consciousness beam coming in from source makes it start to sing. When it hits a critical mass by drawing more from the unified field of like vibration, where a little choir starts, when it hits that critical mass, there's a stage where it goes from being a vibration and transitions into being an oscillation, where it goes from being sound to being light. There is the first manifest. The thing that's between manifestation and demanifestation as far as the hologram are the ionic particulates. They have the ability to change polarity by what's around them. They can change their charge. Particles can change shape and change affiliation because they are more mutable particles. They are micro subparticles, subatomic particles. Certain ones of these have been identified, but science doesn't know. Their traces have been identified. That something was there, we can tell because it affected other things, but we couldn't see the thing that affected it, that kind of thing. But they can see the things that come out of them. What you have at that transition point where you go from vibration, stop, into oscillation. It's like when you do your Merkaba spins. You go from your magnetic, get it to a certain point, then stop it, then you reverse it and go the other way, and you do your electrical. Well, that's what's happening, where you have your vibration, hits a critical mass, then you stop it, holds there, and then it reverses spin. When that reversal happens, there is the first little light sound wave that is created. Literally, it goes from being internal vibration to external flash on. That is a myon, a dion, or a trion unit, an ionic particulate particle. Now, this chart is interesting because it shows you, it's hard to read this one because this was pulled on the printer that doesn't print too good on Mylars, but I'll read it to you. We started with this yesterday. We had part of chi, part of k, and part of cum. Now remember, they're the template stuff, right? Okay, the points where the templates make their transition into the stuff that external is made of is through the trions, dions, and myons. The part of cum particles, the part of cum scalar templates create myons. The part of K, which are the ones that are affiliated with they have both positive and negative electrical affiliation and their own, so they're like they have a tri-charge. They're the ones that form antiparticles. They're the ones that have the unity rather than the polarity. They have the polarity held within unity. They're the ones we want to aim for. That's where you get the best experience when you're in your hologram. And then you have over here part of chi units that are the I meant part of chi units over here. It's this one over here. The part of chi units that are the tri-phase ones. They hold the unity and they hold the polarity all in one. They form trions. Okay, that's this line over here. Then part of K form dions. They're the electrical ones. These are the ones that, now dions have a positive electrical affiliation where myons have a negative. So you have a negative electrical field and a positive electrical field. This is what literally the hologram is built upon. Okay, we call the ones that are built on dions base electrical, and the ones built on myons are base magnetic. Now, what myons do is they draw energy. They bring energy back. They're the particles that would take your hologram out of manifestation into vibration. Then you have over here the dions, the base electrical. These are the ones that move it into manifestation. They work together. And we're constantly in the process of our templates, and our DNA templates are taking, we start as myon consciousness on this side because we're actually, our consciousness here, because of its vibration when it came in, is considered myon consciousness. So we come in to the myon unified field. We come in as the myon unified field, holding a particular template. And then once we integrate, we have our consciousness that comes in, takes the myons, becomes the myons. It projects portions of ourselves into, say, dimension 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 frequency, when there's enough of our consciousness in, that's when that vibration starts to happen, and that's when it goes into the process of beginning to initiate. And that's when it goes into the process of it hitting a critical mass of vibration, where our consciousness then switches into becoming particles. It switches on from myons, remember the vibration, to dyons. So we literally think in dyons when we think a thought. When our thoughts get projected, we're seeing a dyon field. All right, we started out as these guys, the magnetic ones. They built up to a certain point, and then the transition, they reversed polarity, and they became dyons, which are base electrical transmitting particles, and they are the ones that literally transmit what's in our template out, or what appears to be out. We're actually just looking at that field of them, but because the way our perceptions are arranged, because the way our templates are arranged, they appear as a three-dimensional hologram. So we go from myons to dyons and back again. These are always switching places from each moment to moment. We go from myon into dyon, back to myon, back to dyon, and there's a series of them going. We have one myon goes out. Okay, you go from vibration to oscillation, and then as this oscillation reaches its critical point, this is starting to initiate here. The next vibration is starting to initiate. So as this one starts to go out, this one starts to come on. So it's very balanced. This is why balance is very important in one's life, because when you get out of balance, these things start to get out of balance too. Your natural core creation processes, and that's when your life can take on really wacky characteristics in your hologram. Like when people do really Kundalini activations without understanding how to really use the higher energy systems to stabilize what you're running, they can create absolute messes in their bodies. They can get sick and have terrible experiences, but it goes from the body into the hologram. Sometimes people, when they're clearing karma, the old-fashioned way, they used to say, be careful what you ask for because you might get it. When you ask for I want my karmic healing accelerated, you may find your hologram just takes on a life of its own, and you lose your car, your job, your family, and end up in a flood, and then you go someplace else to get away from it and end up in an earthquake. It's as if your hologram's just trying to do you in. You know what I mean? Now, what we're experiencing really is consciousness is sitting still and experiencing itself flashing on and off into pictures. But portions of ourselves are the flashing on and off little units that are us. We're the portions of the bigger consciousness. They're taking the form of scalar waves. They're flashing on to be the hologram. We have our own sentience. Okay? We're creator and created all at the same time. So we know this here as in a different way than the part of us that's just in vibration. We're part of it. We're in it, but not of it. That's what I mean by that. There's a part of us that is always not in the manifestation, but there's a part of us that's in it. Now, if you're going to bring those parts together to heal, you have to acknowledge both parts. You can't just say, I will be not of it at all. You will try to be vibration. You'll hold all your energy in and not let it flow. That's why you need to actively engage and be fully engaged in your hologram. You're here, you're going to think, you're going to feel, you're going to experience, because that's the nature of the hologram. And it's through allowing that to move through you and not get stuck that you'll be able to combine it with the other part of you that's not in the hologram. So there's a surrender that's involved. There's a trust that's involved in the part of you that is in vibration, which means it is still actually in the primal sound fields. It's the part of you that's closest to your wholeness with Source when you go into the vibration stage. And they call it the divine feminine, interestingly, because it's the negative stage. It's the stage and women's bodies are actually built more on that principle. Males' bodies are built more on the other, which means male bodies have a bit more in their templates of the dyons, and females have a bit more of the myons in the template. So there's this whole thing that we're in the middle of an illusion, and it's amazing when you start to see the things we take for granted, like being and having bodies and that kind of stuff, how that's really manufactured. There is a process. It's like a processing plant, and we're the processing plant, and we're the ones making the choices. There are going to be more dispensations of information given in the next probably 3 or 4 months that have to do with some really interesting ways to take that knowledge and that power and begin to work with parts of our programming, parts of the propaganda that we've accepted as our templates that keeps us so we'll never see a stargate open. First of all, we've been programmed to believe they don't exist. We've been programmed to be terrified if we do start to believe that things like that exist, because everybody else will think you're crazy. or the psychologists tell you you're nuts. We've been programmed that if we start to hear voices, we better run for the doctor or hide, either one, because that means we're psychotic or kooky. We've been fed labels on what things mean here, and if we continue to believe those things, we're going to block our ability to have what we're trying to experience, which is the ability to move through into higher dimensional space. So there are things that we'll learn how to do with this, but this is the beginning of learning what it is we're doing by being here, how we're flashing off and on. We'll learn to catch. In fact, we'll try to do it a little later, probably after lunch. I would like to do this, and if I could forget, remind me, because this can be really neat. There's a way where you can start to find and I don't know if we can do it in the daytime, though. That's my concern. All right, yeah, I'll do it. We'll do this tonight, okay? Once it's darker outside, I don't know what time it gets dark here, but it will be better in low light. We can start to see where you disappear. We can start to see it easier with each other. All right? We were taught a long time ago, I forgot this exercise, a long time ago, when some of this was being explained to me before I knew about myons and dions. I did know, I was taught that we flash off and on, and I knew that, but I couldn't figure out what it meant, but I got an experience of being able to see it. Well, if you take two people, and they look into each other's eyes for a while, and just look into each other's eyes for a while, to the point where, and you keep the focus. First of all, you start to get, your eyes will get sore, because you're picking up more frequency you're transmitting frequency between your eyes to each other. If you can get past the point where you need to blink, because you break it again, and you lose your focus, what you're trying to do is learn to hold enough frequency where your eyes can even deal with enough frequency, where you can begin to see where the hologram begins to go away, the point where the next moment would start to come through, to see between the moment points. And it starts out as really strange. You won't just see everything flash off all of a sudden. That comes later, and you can get to the point where that happens. What you're doing is changing the speed of your consciousness. You're making your consciousness vibrate differently in order to be able to catch the moments. You're actually slowing it down. You're slowing the brain waves down to do it. And you're doing it by amplifying the energy that's coming through, that's affecting the pineal gland. The pineal is not as dormant as they think it is. So when you do this, you'll start to see parts of the person. First you'll feel like your eyes are playing tricks on you, and you'll want to close them, but they'll start to burn a little bit and maybe tear. If you can get past that point, you'll start to see like areas. You'll be looking here, but you'll notice here in your vision space just makes a black hole and disappears a little bit. Or you may see like this part of the person's face just blank out, and you kind of want to rub your eyes. So what happened? My eyes are doing something funny. It's not your eyes doing something funny. It's your eyes doing something that they're not used to doing too often, which is going at a speed. The vision, the perceptual facilities that your eyes are connected to are going at a speed where they're beginning to see the flash-off points, where the position, where what is on in the matter base is turning off and going into vibration. And it'll be replaced immediately. So you have to catch it, because right as one is going off, the other's coming on. But there's a little angle right in between that you can start to see this. And it's kind of cool, because after a while you can really sit there and do it. I remember doing this with somebody, we're sitting there crying at each other, like the eyes are burning, we're going to keep them open, we're going to keep them open. And once in a while, if you get enough of the focus going, you can blink them, to clear them, but then get right back into the focus. And we were watching each other disappear, then the face flashing started to happen. That's exciting. The face flashing, where you start to see who your other faces are that are in the other time vectors. You will see theirs and they will see yours, which is cool. You'll see the face will flash off for a second, go black, and then real quick a lighter version, it won't be as dense as the face you're looking at here, will come through, and and then it'll flash off and the other person will come back again. You can start to see between the pulses of the moments here, and that's when you start to go trans time. You're going transharmonic time perception. So we'll play that. Remind me if I forget, if I get on other stuff, that this evening, hopefully it'll be a little bit darker out. We'll try to do this. It's easier to do it in low light because you don't have the distracting light field around you. But it's kind of fun. You can also do it in a mirror. Okay? Yeah, where it's just you and yourself and I that you're going to deal with, right? Yeah. However, you can also get yourself in trouble doing it in a mirror, because mirrors work because they bend light in a certain way in the hologram. They're a certain pattern in the hologram. They work as doorways. They're a pattern of energy that looks like a mirror out here, but they're a combination of different substances that we see as the mirror, are actually certain energy patterns that create interdimensional doorways. So things can come through mirrors with you when you start to open the ability to perceive through them. So you always seal your mirrors first before you play with them, and you always run a Maharik seal, the D12 frequency, before you even attempt this, because if you could really, really draw in all sorts of things. You could have legions of things you don't even know exist come through, right? And remember, if they do come through, that implies that they're in your template someplace in the subconscious. It's a good way to let loose and find out what's in your subconscious, because you may see fleets of little flying demons go flying out of your mirror into your room. It means you have this in your template. You and a whole bunch of other people who know that these guys exist, but your conscious mind didn't know. Your first remembering was having them fly out of your mirror. You don't really want them to fly out of your mirror, so use the D12 frequency to seal it. Running the temporary Maharik seal will help to stop those things. And meanwhile, you can start looking into your own eyes, and you'll start to, at first it's like you get bored looking at your own eyes, and your focus changes a little then, and it kind of pulls in and bends itself in a way, and there's a certain way you can look into your own pupils, and you feel it out, because it's a little different angle for everybody. You start to feel something behind your eyes. You're actually feeling back here, but it feels like you're going this way to feel it. You're going into the hologram. That can begin a process of self-knowing that's really useful. Now, what time, Michael, what time are we supposed to break for lunch before so I know what to get into? Okay. Does that mean that I should not go into the next section, or? Are we ready in the next 5 minutes? Okay, well, I'll finish this then, and I won't launch into the next one. It's going to take probably half hour, 45 minutes. Okay. When we get into realizing that this is our projection, this is where it got fun. This is the new material that they were giving me. Where, okay, we have myons, dions, and trions. I can understand that. We have the particle units and the things they build up to form templates, and then the crossover point between templates and matter are these things, the ionic particulates. What do they make in the hologram? You know, they make the subatomic and microsubatomic particles. If we come down and look at the dions, the electrical charge ones, they would be considered, and it's misleading to say it, to take this too seriously, but you could look at them as the male and the female, the divine masculine, divine feminine particles, okay, because one's electrical. Male would be electrical, female would be magnetic. And yeah, that's kind of how you look at it. And that's the divine Son, divine child, the Christos, that's created by putting the two of them together, and it becomes more than the sum of its parts, that kind of thing. But when we come down into particle reality, we have nions, what they're associated here. The primary microsubatomic units, or not quite yet particles, that are projected into the hologram by particae, by dions, the electrical ones, are negative charge units. They project their opposite. So if you have a dion, a unit, which is really a light sound unit, a micro light sound unit, and it has a positive charge, it will project negative charge, electrical charged particle things out in here. Now, they would be things like electrons, and the protons that doesn't go here. There would be antiprotons. I can't even read it. Electrons and antiprotons, which have negative charges. These are particles now. The science has identified and labeled. All right, they create electrons, antiprotons, hadrons. These are not all negative either. Some of these have properties that they could actually sometimes. You'll see the same word in all three places, the same type of particle, which means there's different types of them formed by different, myons, dions, or trions. But these are primarily associated with, dions are primarily associated with electrons and antiprotons, with hadrons, with things called mesons, and they're a form of boson. These are all subatomic particles. And I'm looking through the dictionary saying, how do you spell that, guys? Oh, okay. To find out, what are these? I'd never even heard of them before. Quarks, baryons, if I can pronounce that, I have to look on it this way because it's too hard. Okay, fermions and weakons. Okay, these are associated with nions. Over here, myons, the negative ones, the negative crossover particulates, create positive charge units, which would be protons. Gluons are primarily formed by these. They're not necessarily, science doesn't necessarily identify some of these as positively charged. They don't know what their base is. They don't even know that what a base electrical or base magnetic template means, or particle. Because I've had that discussion with physicists. Well, what do you mean, base magnetic? Base electrical. we were talking about the myons, dyons, and tryons. It's either a drawing force or a transmitting force. I didn't realize they didn't know that much about particle interaction yet. So it was like, I don't even know how to describe it to them. Now I do. This is the point that is showing you what types of particles are manifesting from these types of ionic particulates. Okay, we have gravitons, gluons, gravitons, neutrons. In their dormant phase. Now, neutrons do things. They have their dormant phase and their active phase, which means they change. Okay? Their structure goes from, remember, myons, dyons, and tryons. Flash on becomes one thing, flash off becomes something else, combine it with its opposite, and it becomes a third. So literally, the particles that these form are not as stable particles as they think they are. They transition, they disappear from here, become something else someplace else in one of the other fields, then come back again as something else here. All right? So it's really, there's a dance going on with subatomic particles that the scientists have no idea. They know some of it's happening. They've theorized that some parts of it might be occurring. They have no idea the degree to which it's occurring continually. So there's a lot of new exciting things for scientists to find out. All right? So this goes into, still on the myon side, bosons, positrons, and a whole bunch of other things. These are just some of them. And then over here, these are the fun ones. This is the stuff that gets you to inner Earth, okay? Because that is a tryon reality projection field. You have photons, leptons, muons, they call them Tao, I believe, gag bosons, pheromones, weakons, and neutrons in their active state. Neutrons and protons do a little dance when you start to do atomic transmutation by combining with your antiparticle double. The neutrons become active, and they turn into protons, and everything gets sucked into the nucleus of the cells. All the electrons, reverse polarity, get sucked into the nucleus of the cells, and you have major proton activity happening in the nucleus of cells. The neutrons become protons, and then the shift, their angular rotation of particle spin, shifts to match that of their antiparticle units. They're in their antiparticle double's body. They come together and in fusion, in internal fusion, and literally turn into tryons, which makes them disappear out of polarity, and they come back down as an expression at the next octave up. So this is the transmutation process on the nuclear level. This is what your bodies will go through. And there's a lot more that's been given on that. There's a whole section of information that's going to be in the new book that I'm hoping to have out by November or December that is the Forbidden Testaments of Revelation. There's a whole series of, they've explained exactly what happens in the DNA to make these changes happen. There's a production of a chemical called celestylene that occurs within the hydrogen bonds that hold the DNA chains together. The hydrogen bonds activate by something called turnstile DNA sequences. Turnstile DNA sequences are sequences that are turned off right now that would appear in the hydrogen bonds and fill out the DNA. Now I talk about hydrogen bonds. People who know about DNA know what that means, but people who don't might not. When we talk about chemical DNA basically has chemicals lined up that form the ladder rungs, and then it has these little what do you call those things? The side rails of the ladder, because it's like a ladder-shaped chemical unit. All right, you have the ladder handrails and the ladder rungs. The ladder rungs it was like a ladder that was cut in half, and you have sugar and phosphate molecules that make up the handrails. And there's a little thingy that sticks out that's called a nucleotide base, which is a combination of one of 4 different chemicals, plus I believe sugar and phosphates are in with that too. So you have these half ladders sticking out here, and you have another one that I believe one comes from the male, one comes from the mother, one comes from the father line gene code. They actually were that divided once. They're not now because they're all scrambled. Once upon a time, one side of the ladder would be the imprint from the mother gene line, one would be from the father gene line. They come together by the chemicals in the nucleotide bases that are drawn to each other. There's only two, I'm not going to get into them, there's adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. And they line up with each other, they draw to each other and link. And what they link with is called a hydrogen bond, hydrogen atoms. They're very weak. All right, there's a very weak link that holds the DNA ladder together. It's in that hydrogen bond that changes happen. There are changes happening because when the template for the DNA, for each DNA strand, changes, there are things that activate in the hydrogen bonds that aren't there right now. They're called turnstile DNA sequences. They turn on and they shift rotation of particle spin on the molecules and atoms that make up the rest of the DNA chain. They create a chemical that's secreted in the body and the blood. It's secreted in the body through the DNA, goes through its natural processes of getting distributed into the body so it can get into the bloodstream, changes the hormone current, content, activates the pineal and the thyroid and thymus complexes, and it prepares the body chemically for its transition of shift and angular rotation of particle spin. At this point, the body starts to take on, like you can see color flickering through its auric field temporarily, very quickly, and you will then get a red glow. There will be like a magenta, crimson cast that comes around the skin right before it's ready to transmute. And that's because it's entering a frequency spectrum of going down into the D1 particles combined with the D15 particles, which will give you go into antimatter, and then you pop up someplace else. And it leaves a little bit of dust, the stuff in the atoms that was not able to make the transition, the stuff that couldn't pull into the nucleus of cells, that stuff that stayed outside of the nucleus of the cells ends up literally getting burned off, and it ends up kind of like a silica carbon type of very fine powder dust that gets kind of left. And there's also, mixed with that powder, trace elements of a new element that they don't know exists yet called celestylene, which has a very short, I think they call it half-life. It decays very quickly. So you can get, in certain conditions it won't, but on exposure to oxygen it does. So there's this whole process that your body goes through because your ions and dions are turning into trions, which is turning your particles and antiparticles into antiparticles, which is shifting your angular rotation of particle spin to get you into another space-time vector of a different frequency. So there's a whole biological process involved, and it's exciting to have this information here. It's been a very long time since this information was allowed here. And when we work with Merkaba, I mean, it's like huge amounts of information. Wow, where do we start? You start with Merkaba. It's that simple. The spiraling, counter-rotating fields of electromagnetic energy around you. You start with activating those on the right spin ratios, and you work with the D12 Maharata current and some of the higher life force currents to begin the clearing process that will get your DNA template back into the right order, despite the fact that the planetary grids are progressively setting stuff in. This is why we have to do technique right now. We can run our Maharata. Normally that would clear it and hold it permanently. But as soon as we clear it, we pick up from our templates, because our templates are part of the Earth template, we're picking up more of the mess that's in the grid, so we're remanifesting the mess. So we need to build enough D12 frequency to make it through a number of those flash on and off moments, and then it'll start to drop and dissipate. We have to bring more up. We're manually anchoring our Christ consciousness so that we can eventually do the molecular transmutation. This is what your body has to go through that I just described, as far as everything pulling into the nucleus of cells and then shifting an angular rotation of particle spin, producing celestylene. If you're going to go through a gate, this is what your body has to become capable of doing. You can't go through any other way, because if you don't go through that process, the chemicals that you're made of here will hit those frequencies and will crash rapidly. It will destroy their templates because it's too high of a frequency. And if their templates rip apart particularly very quickly, the body goes into spontaneous combustion that starts in the nucleus of cells. So it's a physical process. This is why people say, oh, you don't need to worry about the physical body if you're going to be spiritual. It's like, yeah, right, you can float around down here in two pieces for the rest of eternity if you want to. But if you want to do spiritual integration and get yourself out of here and ascend, you need to incorporate your body in the process, because it's anchored through your body. So after lunch, we're going to go through some of the processes we have thought fields. Now, one more thing before we do that. I want to continue this down real quick. We have ions, dions, and trions. We have the negative charge, base negative charge units, positive charge units that turn into these type of particles. Okay, electrons, hadrons, mesons, etc. Over here, where these are the ones we're aiming for, the trions, photons, leptons, muons, tau, gag bosons, all the way down to here. This is primary force association that's associated with each of these things. This is where it gets fun, where we find out that particles or conditions that have what appears as a neutral mass velocity, where there's neutral mass, where it really has like zero mass. It's like a particle, it's something, but it doesn't have any of what appears to be weight or mass to it, or doesn't have any velocity. It doesn't move. It doesn't have any movement. It appears to not have spin. Things that appear under microscopes that have these conditions are actually associated with trions. They look different when you're in the inner Earth time bands, but from here these are the forces they're associated with. Neutron activation. This is associated. These trions are what it takes. You need to have trions are what will set your neutrons into activation in your cell nucleus to turn into protons to make enough to pull in all the electrons to reverse the polarity. So these are associated with the transmutation process. They're associated with zero force type things, which means neutral things that don't have any force or movement. The main force they're associated with is electromagnetism and its properties, fission and fusion, particle conversion. When we get over to here and we see what the dyons are associated with, remember they're the base electrical units, they're associated with particle decay, electron spin, electricity, light and lightning, fission, and particle velocity. So that's what they have to do with. And we come over to the myons, they are associated with particle accretion, the drawing in process of particles, with proton adhesion, the fact that protons and neutrons, actually quarks pull together with gluons, the different particles, to hold protons together in the nucleus of cells. This is happening because of the myons, the myons. The myons are holding together the protons. They're holding them together so the life force units can build to fill out the matter temperature. And vice versa, which means we're making a real mess when we play with nuclear weapons and things. Okay, and particle mass. So here you have particle velocity, the speed at which particles go and the spin that they're going to go at. And here you have particle mass, how much density they're going to have. These are the forces that are associated with them. These are forces that scientists know exist. They're forces we observe. The primary elemental forces. There are 4 primary elemental forces that science recognizes officially, which is the electromagnetic force, the weak nuclear force, the strong nuclear force, and the gravitational force. Now, the weak nuclear force is like a force that brings, I think its effects can be felt over long distances, but it is much weaker than the other thing, that is the strong nuclear force, which is a force that's detected in atoms and actually holds them together. And it's much stronger, but it has a much shorter range of influence. It's like the inside shorter force, and the other is the long-range force, but it's dissipated. Now, the weak nuclear force is associated with the dyons, the base electrical charges, and the strong nuclear force is associated with the myons, the base magnetic. The gravitational force is associated with the base magnetic and is directly proportional to what the base electrical forces are doing and what the electromagnetic forces are doing. Electromagnetic force is a property, and its properties come from tryons, the interaction between polarities within a neutral base. So it's a 3-way interaction. That's what really generates electromagnetism. It also is affiliated with the weak nuclear and the strong nuclear force and the gravitational force. So when you see the tryons affect all of the primary forces, and then there's the myons and dyons have their stronger influence, like the strong nuclear force is the base magnetic, and the weak nuclear force that kind of radiates outward, that has more of a range, is associated with the electrical. Okay? And all of these are associated with time projection of the hologram, with projecting the hologram, controlling the vibration of units, where vibration goes to oscillation, where hologram goes off to on, in a syncopated sequence. And syncopated means kind of like off the beat rhythm. You have one rhythm, then you have a rhythm that's hopping in between those rhythms. To make the illusion happen where there's no blank spots, where all of a sudden it shuts off and another one comes on, they're syncopated, where one goes off, another comes on, and it's like a dance. And it's not just a dance here. It's a dance. Our dance is synchronized with the antiparticle universe, which is synchronized with the inner Earth timelines. It's a dance that involves all those reality systems at the same time. So it gives us something to think about when we go to do our lunch. I think lunch is on its way. Yes? Mm-hmm.
I've had some of those be able to step around all the knowing that we have around the food that's in the chemicals and yet see what's still testing on it.
We'll have a lot of ground to cover, and we'll pick up where we left off. I can figure out how to turn this on. Is that it? That's it. Okay. Now, pardon the little scribbles here. There's something I want to show you. I just scribbled onto this diagram over here. Okay. You can tell it's new material when you have handwritten scribbles all over everything. All these nice, neat charts and things start out like this, usually on about 5 different pages with hieroglyphics scribbled all over them. And then they slowly come into focus, just like when you think a thought, it builds up and it makes particles, and eventually the particles come into accretion and become a solid thing that looks like something outside of you. Well, the graphs are like that too. Now, we talked about before how when we think a thought, we're actually creating a dyon field, or an electrically charged field. Now, it's an electrically charged field on the template level, because dions are positive charge. They create, in manifestation, the opposite charged particles. So the dions, the electrical signature that we send out, the dion grid we send out with our thoughts, creates a negative charged thought field, which is like frozen thought field that creates the matter illusion. There's a process by which this happens that you can understand where the Vesica Pisces and the Merkaba fields come into this whole process. Now, this is what this little scribble is here. See these? There's a Vesica there. Okay, there's a circle there and a circle there. Now, this circle here in this diagram is representing your template, the part of your template. The other circle is representing the planetary template. Okay? So you have here in this particular universe, this is the particle universe as opposed to the antiparticle. There's a particum, and then there's a particate universe. We're just dealing with the particum universe right now, where we are, where our consciousness is focused. Our consciousness actually exists as myons. This is an illusion of what we look like. What we look like really is a field of specifically organized ionic particulates, which are sound vibrations. Where actually it's the tone body that exists beneath and before and with the light body. All right? So the tone body, the myon body, is who we are. When we think a thought, it's actually a part of our body moving out into the unified dimensional field of the planetary template, where then that part of who we are becomes the hologram that we see. Now here we have our myon body. And we have the myon body, of the Earth's template. So what you have is a myon template intersecting with a myon template. All right, you have a negative and a negative. All right, they would repel each other if they were the same, if your myon body had the same amount of thrust in its myon units as did the planetary template. But the planetary template's myons are bigger and stronger. They have more energy to them. They have more vibration to them. So there's stronger vibration that has the ability to override the vibration of the myons that you send out. This is how your myons, you as a myon, gets portions of your template turned into reverse polarity to become dions, which move away from the rest of your template. And this is where you get the holographic projection. You're looking at a dion field that used to be, when it was myons, a part of your body, a part of your being as a myon self. But it got its polarity reversed and projected outward. Now, the process happens, they were explaining this to me over lunch, and I do these little diagrams going, oh my God, it does that, and it does that, and it does that, and it does that, and then it becomes here. I'm just going to take you from, it does several things that I'll try to quickly explain, because it's shifting of angle rotations and those kind of things, that gets us to the point where the hologram projects out. So you have your vibration. And remember, if you just take one unit of one part of yourself that's part of your template, like one aspect of your D1 first strand template, where your consciousness is as your first strand template. If you just take one little code, this is what the one little code would be doing, that one little piece of your consciousness. It would take the myon, and the myon field of you intersects with the myon field of the planetary template. This one has a bigger charge to it. They're both negative charges. And they start to, now the negative myons are pull particles. They draw in. So they're trying to draw in each other. They're both trying to pull the other one in. It creates a tension zone, first of all. And it creates what's called a magnetic repulsion zone. They're creating tension. Tension is necessary if you're going to have manifestation. All right. So they first start to fight with each other and pull energy. So there's resistance. They have resistance to each other. Because one is larger than the other, the planetary one is larger than the one that's coming from your smaller template, that one eventually will win, and it will draw the other one. It will reverse its polarity. It will literally pull the axis that it's spinning on into reverse to match its own axis. Okay, it will pull it this way. Now the axis on these particles, on your myon units and the ones in the planetary template, are actually a different axis, but you have the same rotational spin. What happens with the larger mass Mayan is it draws itself into tension with your Mayan to the point where it pulls the axis of spin that yours is spinning on, and it pulls it into a 45-degree shift. The 45-degree shift in your Mayan axis turns it into a Dian, which reverses its electrical charge and polarity. At this point, it can pull into the planetary template. The other Mayan is still a Mayan, and it will continue to draw in the unit that was you, but the unit that was you is now electrical, so there's no more resistance. So now electrical, positive and negative draw together when you put, like in a battery, okay? Put the ends that have the same charge together, they push apart, but you put them negative, positive, and the current flows. So your consciousness gets drawn in to the planetary template. At that point, what is happening is this circle that was your template and that circle that is the planetary template, they actually start out as two circles that just touch each other on the outside, but as this process of pull is happening and then the reversal of your Mayan into a Dian, it brings those two spheres together. It makes a Vesica Pisces. Now what a Vesica Pisces is if you look over here, these are the two fields separated. There's a triangle pointing up with a circle in it and a triangle pointing down with a circle in it. The one pointing up would represent the electrical charge, the base electrical charge particle, the one that's pushing. This one, so that would be the Dian. That once you turned into a Dian, your energy fields will be doing this. The one down here is the Mayan field that's drawing in. That's the upside down triangle, just like your Merkaba, the electrical on top and the magnetic on the bottom, right? They have a particular ratio that they normally have to each other that I won't go into the math ratios, but when you get the information sent to you, once this chart pack thing supplement is done, the ratios and the shifts will be on there, so it shows you why you need to use the spins that you use on the Merkaba. But the Merkaba fits into this whole thing. Here's where the Vesica forms. So you have half a Merkaba, half a Merkaba, which are electromagnetic spirals. One's electrical, one's magnetic. When they come together, because the one Mayan from the planetary grid changed the polarity of your consciousness, reversed it, and pulled itself into merger with it, it pulls these two together to form this, which is the Merkaba vehicle. At the center of the Merkaba vehicle is the area of projection. That's where the hologram happens. That's where electrical and magnetic force relate at certain degrees to each other. They start to refract energy to each other, where you get a projection that is called light. A Vesica Pisces shows you that in this space here is actually where light occurs. Here you have what began as Mayan, or sound. Here you have Mayan, or sound. Two sound fields colliding. They collide at a 45-degree angle with each other. And then there's reverses of polarity on the smaller one, creates the merger of the two in a small space. That's that intersection space in the Vesica, which is that circular space inside of the Merkaba vehicle when your Merkaba vehicle is activated. The space that your hologram is taking place in is in here, which is in here. That little oval shape in there is actually this. It's symbolizing that's when you make a Merkaba, what you're doing is making a Vesica. And you're pulling your consciousness and the consciousness template around you from the dimensionalized template in together, and they collide, and light is formed. And that light will take and project whatever the patterns were in both templates. They merge them together, and the hologram gets projected. So that's how, this is why when we work with symbols like the Vesica and when we work with Merkaba, without explaining this, you'd say, well, okay, I understand I have these Mayans and Dians, and when I think thoughts, they come out in Dians because they get their poles reversed, and that makes my illusion. Where do Merkabas and Vesicas and stuff fit in? This is precisely where they fit in. They are the byproduct. Those energy forms are the byproduct of what your consciousness Mayans do when they intersect with the consciousness Mayans of the field around you, and it creates your Dian electrical thought field. And this is where your hologram takes place. So when you start to work with these fields, the Merkaba fields around you, you're affecting the relationship between the outer template of the planet and the template that is your consciousness. You're affecting how they behave together. When things are, and this happens on a major microscopic level, micro units. There are literally billions and billions of cycles of this happening. The two coming, they collide with each other, one reverses polarity, and pop, it comes out. Within every breath, you have billions of these transactions taking place on each code, in each strand, in each dimension, and they're all taking place simultaneously. So it literally sends out this major movie picture. We're all in the theater watching a movie. And when we begin to realize that the whole movie is controlled by what these two energy fields do, what our self as a Mayan field does compared to the Mayan field of the planetary template that we're in, that will determine how that is functioning, and if it's functioning properly, will determine what kind of hologram we perceive and how much we will appear to have control over what to do with the hologram, over how much we can influence the hologram. The reason that humanity has got to a point where it's lost touch with 99% of its ancient knowledge of how to be masters of the hologram, where the hologram could be a joyful experience, is because our DNA template has been blocked on purpose. It's been blocked by creating blockages in the planetary template, and because our template's part of it, if the planet can't run certain frequencies, even if you have the template for them, the planet can't bring them in, so you can't reach them. Because the primal creation currents, the life force currents that come down from the primal sound fields through the primal light fields, through the dimensionalization process. You have the Kundalini Kirashe currents, and then you have the Maharada D12 current, and then you have the Antankarana currents, the nine-dimensional Kundalini currents. They all have to come down and move down through the scalar patterns. They flash on through the scalar patterns to energize the systems here. How they get here and how they are able to come in to give the energy to the illusion is because the templates, the scalar templates of sound that are like turned off, are waiting for the arrival of that frequency to come in through the primal life force currents. The primal life force currents are like a holographic beam. That is the living beam of consciousness that comes into the living templates that are sleeping and wakes them up so they can project outward. Now, we all have templates. The planet has a template, the galaxy does. If you don't have the full dimensional spectrum in your template, if any part of that is blocked, that means that particular current cannot come in to that system. Our planetary grids were blocked, so we couldn't receive any more than 3 frequencies of current, which is the telluric current. We were cut off from being able to receive the density 2 all the way up to primal light, sound field currents. They're still there. They still exist all around Earth, and Earth is within them. But they can't be pulled into the hologram in the matter body because they can't enter the templates because the templates are twisted. It's like having a door or a valve that is supposed to open and close, but if it locks and its hinge freezes, what's supposed to go through it can't come through. And that's what's been happening. That has affected everything on this planet. It's affected our DNA in amazing ways. It's affected our templates by taking a minimum of a 12-strand template where we could run full 12 dimensions. That's just the regular human imprint. Indigos can run 24 to 48 full frequencies, the whole primal sound field, some of them. You can't access those currents without D12 current, which is the D12 Maharada Christos current, and if the planet can't hold D12 Christos current, you can't pull those currents into your body. This makes the body mutate, because remember, what the body is part of the hologram that flashes on. It flashes on into particle base, where the Mayans and Dians create literally the subatomic particles that form the matter base, which forms the chemicals that form and fill out body forms here. So literally down to our subatomic level and beyond, we have been changed in ways that weren't organic to our original D12 template. We were supposed to have, humans were designed as a minimum of what's called a base 12 life form. That means the genetic alphabet is supposed to have 12 letters in it, not 4. Now, what it means, the genetic alphabet, the way science uses this, is that the genetic alphabet is determined by those chemicals that make up, they're called the base nucleotide bases, the base chemicals that make up the rungs in the ladder, the chemical rungs that form the shape of the DNA ladders. There are supposed to be 12 different chemicals in there. Right now, there are only 4. And what's really interesting, and this is one of the big fallacies about the Human Genome Project that's going on right now. Science assumes that, first of all, humans are a base 4 genetic alphabet. But it's not just humans. They assume everything has the same base alphabet. Because right now, when you look at the chemical DNA, everything, all things that have DNA are made of 4 chemicals. Not anymore. So it's hiding a fact that the reality of the chemical bases of DNA are not a fixed genetic alphabet. They are a variable genetic alphabet, which means humans should have 12 chemical combinations that form the chains that form many, many more units of the DNA than what we have right now. We would find that if we took DNA from another species that right now looks like it has a base 4 alphabet 2, it might have a base 4.5 while we have a base 12. It might have a base 6 while we have a base 12 or higher. The chemical combinations the DNA is made out of are not the same for all species, but they're appearing to be here right now because of these mutations, because literally a huge portion of the templates of all of us, including the animal and plant kingdoms, is being shut off because the templates are being blocked through sonic wave interference. What is doing this is literally a standing sonic wave that was put in here 25,500 BC. As a set of crystal implants. We'll talk more about that this afternoon as we continue. It will be either, because we have a tight schedule and I have to increment what I think is most important for you to know into this. We'll talk about, it'll be more toward when we're closing, because there's some more important things I want to get to first. But later, before we leave, we will talk about something called the Nibiru and Dyadic crystal grid. Because this is the little monster, the little black spider that I vaguely mentioned the other day, that has been doing this to the DNA of everything on this planet. And when you mess up the DNA, because you have messed up templates, it severs the consciousness from integrating. We have not been able to remember who we are or to bring in our natural memory banks of our higher dimensional connections, and we haven't even been able to remember that we are the consciousness that's forming our body. We've been out of touch with the illusion. The hologram appears as if it has nothing to do with us. It popped in here somehow, and we have to figure out how to survive in it. Because of these mutations, it's changed the way our consciousness can perceive, and it looks like we're locked in to a world that's externalized from us. As we begin to realize that we're manufacturing the hologram, and the reason we didn't know that was because there have been things done to the DNA that have made it so it's very, very difficult to see where your consciousness goes between those moments. It's like it's edited out all the other stuff that happens between the moments of the hologram projecting out and coming back in. The moments when you return to vibration and you're no longer in light, which means your body disappears. You don't see that anymore. It's not in your perceptions because when you turn back into vibration, your consciousness goes hyperdimensional. It goes up to the next octave of vibration, which means it literally demanifests here and gets more closely into its relationship with itself as source. It goes back into sound. Once upon a time, we knew that. We could feel it in our bodies. We could maintain the illusion of having a body that stays put. We didn't all disappear and reappear before our eyes. It would be a little strange to walk the hologram that way. So we could play in the illusion of matter while fully knowing that there was a part of us in each of those stations of consciousness simultaneously, and they were all switching off back and forth. There's an information relay system. We knew how to talk to our molecules, and if we wanted to shift angular rotation of particle spin, we'd simply envision certain symbols, and the molecules would say, okay, and they would shift the particle spin, and we had full access to going places and doing things that would only seem imaginary right now. The mutation that's taken place in the DNA has not been able to be fixed for thousands and thousands of years because the planetary grids could not run D12 frequency. D12 frequency holds intact the original spectrum of dimension 12 all the way down to dimension 1 frequency. It is the strongest frequency of all of them, so it has the power to override any distortions in the lower dimensional frequencies in a template and reset them to their original divine blueprint. That's why we all have a divine blueprint, that D12 pre-matter blueprint that's made of D12 frequency. Once it's activated in the body, it has the ability to begin purging out the distortions, blockages, and mutations that right now are keeping our chemical DNA as if it's being strangled by the neck. It goes right down into the number of chromosomes. When they look at our chromosomes, the chromosome count is hysterical, the way science is exploring it right now. What it appears to be in the hologram, she has such a weird chromosome counts. Like crayfish have more chromosomes than humans. Cherries have more chromosomes than humans, some kinds of them. And it was even surprising to the scientists, because they thought, well, gee, you'd think more complex life forms would have more chromosomes. What they're seeing right now are half pieces of chromosomes that bond together artificially that form what appears to be whole chromosomes that aren't even whole chromosomes. They're seeing fragments and calling them wholes. They're seeing sequences of things that they call genes that are actually portions of genes that the rest of the sequences are missing. There's a bunch of stuff they call junk DNA. Junk DNA is a riot. Junk DNA has to do with, I believe they're called intron sequences of DNA, which appear to be, they're sitting on the chains, but they don't do anything. They don't make proteins, okay? DNA manufactures proteins and the chemicals that begin the process of the building blocks of life to build up the organic tissue. So there's all of these sequences, huge sequences of intron DNA that is not doing anything. So they call it junk because it seems to be junk, because it seems to not do anything. They're all the spaces where the other stuff that if our templates were turned on would manifest other chemical combinations. So as we begin to work with healing the DNA, there's going to be changes, but slowly but progressively, when they hit critical mass, will happen in the template, and they'll build up critical mass and begin to be part of the hologram, where all of a sudden, it's going to be really funny because there's going to be a few waves where big changes come at once, where science gets to look under microscopes with some people's DNA and finds out that, what did it do? What are those things in there? Is that a chemical? It can't be a chemical. Well, only a base 4 gene code, so it can't be that. They're assuming it's only a base 4 gene code. There's going to be all sorts of things popping up and happening in DNA. One of the most amazing is those sad little lonesome hydrogen bonds that link together the DNA base pairs that hold the ladder chains together. They're going to come to life, and there's going to be new chemicals that form in them. They're called the turnstile DNA sequence, turnstile and spacer DNA sequences. Now, spacer DNA is another type of what they call junk DNA that they have identified, stuff that sits there between, I think that's between separate genes, and it doesn't do anything. The spacer DNA is going to come to life as the hydrogen bonds come to life, and new chemicals, one called celestylene, is going to be formed. And when that happens, all sorts of cool stuff starts to happen in the body. That's when the body has the potentiality to really shift its molecular base and the angular rotational particle spin, which will shift its completely the vibration and spin of its particles to the point where you can literally move through a time portal here and end up someplace else without losing your body doing it. So there's amazing things happening, and the problem is these things, our DNA is going to activate. It's already starting to activate at a higher level because the planet is going through a stellar activation cycle, which means even if the planetary grids are damaged, once the stellar activation cycle starts, the frequency is coming in, and it's going to come in, and if it hits a distorted template, it's going to throw all sorts of distortions all over the place, but it's still going to come in and push its way into the hologram. Same thing with your personal DNA template. When the planet starts to run these frequencies distorted, it's going to start running through you, and it's going to be distorted, and it's going to cause all sorts of crazy type of things. There are a lot of people that are going to end up sick if they don't do something, and if the indigos can't create a protection field enough for them. Indigos, as a collective, have the ability to directly interface with the mass reality field here. They can literally set a field that will assist in the clearing of the DNA templates of huge amounts of people here who couldn't be bothered with learning this stuff, but they can at least help them to clear the blockages. Because when you hit a blockage, what happens is the energy can't go anyplace, so it starts to refract. It's still pushing. It'll go and it'll start bouncing around and create chaotic patterns of all sorts. Now, these chaotic patterns in the template are going to come out in the hologram, and the first stop on the way through the hologram train is the body, the physical body, the emotional body, the feeling centers. So there's going to be emotional disruption, there's going to be mental disruption for some people, depending on where their blockages are. If they have a lot of blockages in the third DNA strand template that's connected to the part of ourselves that we call the mental body, that's the part that right now is choosing what thought forms it's going to use. You're going to have distortions in the chemicals, because chemicals are what, when we have myons and dions, and we start to create myon and dion fields, they take on chemical clothing. So the chemicals, carriers in the brain of the myons and dions, are going to start to do things and change, which is going to create imbalances in the way the brain chemicals work for some people. Not everybody, but for some. Now, if you can stabilize it there, if you don't clear it, it goes someplace. People that can manage to stabilize their thought patterns on the mental level, if they don't heal them, and literally transmute the disharmonic patterns. They will start to drop in frequency, go down to strand 2, and they will start affecting the emotional body. So it'll be your mind may be just fine, and you're calm, cool, collected, and detached, but your emotional body is raging, right? Where it's like screaming because all these energies, you're stuffing them down in because you want to stay stable and focused and in control. So instead of letting the stuff come out saying, this is a disharmonic pattern, now I have to make some choices about how I will heal this and how I will remove it and transmute it to a higher level. If you're just like, I'm not going to deal with that, I'm not going to look at that part, you're stuffing it all down into your emotional body and into your physical body, which is causing more distortions in the second and first DNA strand template. Now, people that repress their emotions, that's the next step in the repression game, where you got your mind under control, or so you think, then your emotions start to drag you all over. This is where your mind is in perfect control. 99% of the time you're doing really, really well, and you're such a nice person. But every once in a while, you either have this absolute, like a week of just absolute depression. You start to go into like that manic depressive mode where sometimes I'm high and sometimes I just want to be dead because I can't stand it. And you and then the other part of yourself, your mental body goes, what is wrong with me? Oh, boy. And you say, all right, the emotions aren't good things. Emotions are like dragging me around, and I can't be as calm, cool, and collected as I want to be. So you get afraid of your own emotions, which makes you want to repress them more. Sometimes they won't come out in that passive stance of just, I feel bad, I feel good, I feel bad, I feel good. Sometimes you get so sick of that one that it just builds up, and then it just comes out and goes, I'm angry, And I'm angry can come out in many different ways. It can come out in, you just bite somebody's face off verbally, and you feel really bad afterwards. I shouldn't have done that. I didn't know, well, yeah, I felt that, but it wasn't really that intense. It just had this fuel behind it, like rocket fuel that came out of somewhere. You will find another way anger comes out is because you have so much control in your mental body that you would never, ever, ever do that to somebody because you're much nicer than that, but you still have this rage wanting to go somewhere. So, some people run to the refrigerator. I will eat it away. It comforts it. It brings more energy and it comforts it, so my brain can be distracted. My emotional body can get distracted with processing telluric elements that are in the food. So it comforts me so I don't have to deal with the fact that I'm angry, right? Addictive behavior is coming, like all sorts of addictive behavior comes out of this repressed rage and anger from disharmonic patterns. They're being stuffed into the emotional body. And they create chemical realities in the body that actually make chemical addictions happen, where your chemicals all of a sudden crave chemicals from over here, be it carbohydrates if you went in that direction, nicotine if you went in that direction. I still function on nicotine because when I walked into this body, it was already running on that pattern. It'll take me 6 months to clear that pattern, and I haven't had the time to stop yet. So when we start to understand that the parts of ourselves that are least understandable and that we don't like to deal with, the parts that do things that we wish we didn't, that part that just compels you to go to the fridge or compels you to pick up the cigarette or compels you to go drink 4 times as much as you know you can process, these kind of things are coming from the emotional body level in the second strand and the first strand, the physical chemical stuff of the D1 imprint that's going right down into your subatomic particles that are saying, feed me this, feed me this. So your mental body's trying to say, I have control. I will not do this today. In 6 weeks' time, if I don't do this, I'll be at this level. But you never get to that point in time because the chemicals override you. Your mental body's trying to hold on, and trying to hold on is what is perpetuating the problem. You're trying to stay in control. You're trying to control these behaviors and repress them instead of understanding the lesson that's in them. There's a message in them. They're crying out. They're parts of yourself that are crying out and say, help, I need healing. There's a blockage in my template here. This is what these type of behaviors are about. Sometimes, now if you can take it back to its energy form, myons. You're made of myons. You just appear to be made of other stuff. That's the hologram. You're made of myons. So there are myons that are distorted in the frequency bands that are below the myons that this part of your consciousness is composed of. You have the power because you are here in a faster flash line. Your myons are faster here. So they have the ability to straighten out those other ones. But right now, this part of the mind has been slowed to an unnatural rate because of the Merkaba spins, and this one has been picked up. So actually your physical and your emotional bodies are running at more intensity than your mental body, which means your mental body is having a heck of a time trying to direct the flashline sequences in the myons below it. The first thing you can do is realize, if you're going to heal the hologram, take it back to its core. Energy. Okay? myons, dyons, and their interactions. You can fight with yourself and go through psychoanalysis from now until eternity, but you're not going to fix 99% of what's creating the problem that got you there in the first place. Energy is the solution to it. And the way you can get to the point where you can clear these things, and clearing is not always fun. I mean, you start to work with the stuff that will clear it. Realize, you know how if a person drinks too much and they drink that last drink and they just know, uh-oh. Body tolerance has been exceeded. And the stomach just sends up a message that says, better find a bathroom. Because you know you're going to lose it, right? The body has hit its tolerance of what is toxic to it, and it will purge it. And the whole process of that purging is not fun, and it's not pretty. But after it's done, you feel a lot better. You're usually pretty tired, but you feel a lot better. I've watched people go through this a lot of times. You know, the drinking was easy. People that get addicted to drugs go through absolute hell with that purging, because those chemicals really bond to the DNA template. So they're literally having to rip them back out of the template to get them out of the system. Now, when we go through milder versions where we're not horribly addicted to anything, so we have some control over our being, and we seem to anyway, you'll be surprised at what comes up out of your emotional body level. There'll be all sorts of yucky feelings sometimes that come up. You'll wake up and have a day, you just wake up and come into consciousness going, oh, yuck. It's a processing day. I can just feel it. Because you can feel the stuff hanging there, getting ready to birth itself out into your hologram. And where is it? It's right here right now. It's in your body. So it feels yucky. And as you proceed through your day, it goes out of your body. And usually it comes out in attitude. It comes out in the emotional signals you're sending to other people. And then they throw some back at you because they didn't like what you sent. And you walk through it. And eventually you'll notice, whatever that was, and sometimes it'll come out in like repeated fights with a certain person. You and them have an issue that matches, right? And you're each taking a different polarized stance. So you will have that interaction, that purging interaction happening. Sometimes anger is healing, where you'll start to get angry about something and you'll have a really heated dialogue with someone. And then you kind of look at each other. Do you ever have one of these arguments where you can get in a screaming fit with somebody, they're screaming at you and you're screaming at them, and then a part of it, each of you at the same time sometimes realizes, this is funny. Where there's a part that becomes aware, because you're letting the energy out. You're letting the disharmonic energy come out, so at least you're not stuffing it down and repressing it. You're resolving an issue. There's two vibrational patterns that are all chaotic, and they're crashing into each other, and as they crash in, parts of them are starting to harmonize, but it looks like a big fight on the outside. There's a part of you that can recognize this, and as you get into higher strand activation, you'll start to get that little, part of you sitting on your shoulder going, saying to the other one that has to the person's shoulder, do you see it yet? This is funny. I don't figure it out yet, but it's funny. We're standing here screaming at each other. You might start to remember, oh my God, we had this fight 5,000 years ago. This isn't ours, this is theirs. You might start processing some of the issues that really aren't too much for you right now, but they started to come through your template because you activated strands that brought you into an open consciousness flow with a different time period with that person. I've had the funniest experiences with this. Oh my goodness. I remember one person who was associated with the Akhenaten Pharaoh period, and we had an incarnation there. And we had this one big fight, because he was getting really tied up with the Anunnaki, and he was really screwing up things that a lot of people depended on him to do. And he had blamed me for certain things, because I wouldn't cooperate. And he was like, over my dead body, I'll cooperate with those guys when they're trying to come in here and take over. You think it's the easier way? Well, in the long run, it won't be. We ended up calling each other spontaneously by the same names, and then looked at each other and, oh, we're still doing it. We brought our incarnational memory right into focus here. In the current time, it brought that time period right here where we saw the tension that we were experiencing was the tension we were experiencing back there. It made it a lot easier when we realized, we're in a different framework now. It doesn't really matter who's going to be on the throne of Egypt, because the throne of Egypt isn't in this hologram anymore. Can we call a truce? That kind of thing. So as we work with technologies that will bring us into more healing in our DNA, so our hologram starts to have a little more stability, and so our emotional bodies can get cleared out. We will have some interesting days and experiences. You have to be gentle with yourself and forgive yourself ahead of time. Don't allow yourself to get so angry at yourself that you start judging yourself. You need to stay in love with yourself, a state of vibrational harmonization. And you need to stay in love with other people too. Realizing if they're having a bad day, And someone might want to make it your fault. If there's a light, it's like it's a pattern that's in there where we start to try to project it out into, okay, I feel this, it's because of that, and you throw it at people. It's actually an implant running through the grids that causes us to do that. It takes our thought field and teaches us to throw it at the object that we're seeing, thinking it's separate from ourselves, instead of saying, oh, okay, that's coming from me. You need to start with forgiveness, which is a willingness to say, we're in a life process here, and it doesn't always look absolutely perfect, but it is perfect in the process that is going on. The perfection is given, but we need to expand what our perception of the word perfection means. Perfection is, you are perfectly yourself right now, and they are perfectly themselves right now. And as faces of God, you need to accept the fact that this is perfectly who we need to be right now. Sometimes being in your imperfection, or what appears to be imperfection, is your fastest way of healing or helping someone else to heal. There are reasons behind the illusion. So if we learn to be gentle with ourselves and get a little bit of mental body savvy, we say, aha, that's one of those emotions coming up. Oh, this is one of those conversations coming up, where you can not get sucked in to the energy of what the miasmic clearing is doing, what clearing those distorted patterns is doing. You can still clear them. You don't disengage. You have to engage them. Let them run. You have to let the yucky feelings come up and come out. It helps a lot if you can learn to direct them effectively. Where they're coming up and out, it's kind of like when you have to go throw up. You don't want to throw up all over everybody around you, so you kind of try to go someplace where you're not going to damage anything and let it come up. There are times when you will do it with other people, but one of the most effective ways to do it is with sound. Before it gets to the point where you put words on the sound, go back to what are words? Words are sound. When we throw stuff at other people because we had a bad day and we just lost it, we got to the point where we're just so tired, you just can't be nice anymore because the emotional body comes up and runs over your mental body. Usually comes out in words or actions. Usually with women, it comes out in words and tears. Now, women have anger too, and they can come out and, they can come out where it's physically directed and they can hit and those kind of things. Where males, just because of the orientation of the percentage of myons and dyons that the bodies and the consciousness are composed of, if you can understand male-female principle with it, you have the myon, which draws in, all right, and you have the dyon, which projects out. So the female body is built on a percentage of having more myon to dyon ratio, just a little bit. But that little bit creates the gender difference. That little bit also creates the consciousness as more likely to turn in on itself and to go this way when it's having disharmony, and to have a nervous breakdown inside and go cry in your pillow and those kind of things. Where the first impulse, the fight or flight stuff, will come out. Women tend to fly. They'll fly into themselves and out and away and jump out of their bodies if they can. They'll go into the astral state. A lot of people would just literally walk around with their astral body here and their head here because they don't want to feel the emotional body here. That tends to be a female stance that's coming from drawing in. The urge to draw in comes from literally what your consciousness is composed of as more myons. Now, the male body has the more of a push. It's a transmitter. It has more of a transmitting charge. So the fight or flight instinct gets translated more into the fight pattern, where it throws energy out this way. Honestly, males and females, the female is in the male and the male is in the female. We're androgynous beings. We're just amplifying one polarity a little bit more. We can learn to balance those things. There are women right now, we're going into a cycle where the polarities are beginning to merge in the self. So you're finding lots more women who feel free to be violent when necessary, and you're finding a lot more men who are finding it's just fine to go cry. And that's good. That means your myons and dyons inside of yourself and your consciousness are starting to balance each other. But when we get into clearing phases, sound is the most powerful healing modality there is. There are times when, if you can just let sound, let those chaotic patterns sound themselves, but not attach them to a language pattern. Not the language pattern your mental body is used to using. Because then you're assigning value and meaning to it that implies something else. You're giving it an intention that way. When you're just trying to clear a bunch of chaos patterns that you don't even know what the intention is, you attach it to an intention that says, it's because of this, and this is what's making this happen, so that's where I'm going to direct this. You're creating an issue. You're creating a thought pattern, conflict drama. If you can go behind that and realize when an icky pattern comes up, it doesn't mean you're denying that something, you have to do something about something in your life that's making this happen. If a person said something to you and that offended me, well, I'm going to tell you about it. Before you tell them about it, go back to sound first and deal with yourself and what the feeling really is. Because we tend to, like attracts like with chaotic patterns. All right? If we're having a conflict pattern, just conflicting feelings coming up, and they're looking for something to attach to so they can get bigger and they can go into the hologram, and you give them, it's like throwing them a little lifeline, say, here you go, it might be this, it could be that this person said this to me, try that, and the emotion goes, yep, that's what's making me feel bad, it's your fault. And then you get mad at the person or upset by the person, and you project it all into the relationship, and then you play ping pong for a while. There's a way to deal with it behind that. And meanwhile, every time you play ping pong, well, you say this, well, I say this, well, you say this, and I say this. What are you doing? You're building the energy, you're amplifying it, and it comes back on when times you disappear, it comes back as amplified energy, and it gets projected out as even more amplified issues the next time. Thought accretes, and what you put into it expands. So it's very wise to be careful how much energy you want to invest in a thought pattern. If you can realize that behind every thought pattern and the disharmonic stuff that'll come up for you, there is really just a sound tone problem. It's like you have a little choir of scalar waves in there, and there's a few of them singing out of tune, and it's messing up the whole sound of the choir. Now, you don't kick them out of the choir, because they're permanent residents. You can't kick them out of the choir. But you can gently work with them to let them say, okay, just try this. Give them tone that will first allow them to express, to diffuse some of the charge, which means go out in a place where there's not too many people around so you don't have to worry about it, and so they don't have to worry about it, and say, okay, I feel that feeling that I can't even define. I won't define it. Once you define it, you label it and you make it a thing. That's when you make it a thought. That's when you give it an identity that's going to go bouncing out into your hologram. Notice it as a feeling. This is energy. Don't assign a judgment to it. Now, this is yucky, icky energy. I don't like you, all right, I'll deal with you. You just assigned a meaning to it, and it's going to come back and say, that's not very nice, and it's going to throw energy back at you, so you're going to play ping pong with your own self. You identify it as energy. And we do this all the time. These are the patterns we're so used to dealing with ourselves on. We run our emotional bodies on a literally subconscious level, so we don't have to deal with the fact that it's really a mess when we start to try to communicate with each other. That part of ourselves and this part of ourselves never seem to agree with each other. If you just deal with it as sound, where you go into acknowledging a feeling, because your emotional body talks to you first as feeling. It'll either be a good feeling, and indigos are usually very sensitive to it because they have more aparthi. Those little receivers for frequency, indigos have more because they have more than 12 strands. So they are more sensitive to all the subharmonics around them. Identify the feeling. If it's an icky feeling, it feels like an icky feeling, say, from this perspective it could be perceived as an icky feeling. It's how you talk to yourself that starts to change how you can interact with it. And you say, that could be identified as icky, but really it's just energy. I'm not going to assign a value to it. It's just an energy pattern. First of all, when you assign a value to it, if you look at something and say, oh, isn't that beautiful? You get this, feeling that spreads through you. If you say, look at something, and it can be a nothing. It can be like a little pebble sitting on top of a leaf. And to some people, they go, oh, it's beautiful. And they would just open up and go right into full resonance with the beauty of this thing. Another person, depending on where their consciousness is, that they could come up and look and say, oh, that's horrible. Feel the difference between just using those word patterns. Say it to yourself in your mind. Even say it outside. Say this with me. Isn't that beautiful? Feel what it does around your arms and stuff. That's a cool feeling, isn't it? You just created an energy signature. How did you do it? You used tones in the form of what you call words. They have a living energy signature. Now say, oh, that's horrible. Try to feel what it does. It does something to you. The tones that you use in the words that you use to represent what you're doing create a total response in the emotional body, and they will bring up the chaotic energy patterns and organize them along the line of what you just said. There's a way to say, that's nice, or that is. Simply, that is, and let it be. Where, yes, it could be horrible, but it could be beautiful. It's actually both in its own way. This is where you have engaged, because you're letting the feelings move through you, you're acknowledging them, you're not burying them. You're saying, yes, I will feel this, but you're going to choose a different way you're going to react to what you're feeling. You're going to choose to say, interesting energy pattern. You can say that with joy feelings or with icky feelings. The big challenge comes when the stuff gets down, when the distorted patterns get so distorted that they start to affect the first DNA strand, because that's going to directly change what your particle base is doing on the subatomic level, and it's going to start with the inside of your body. That's where you get physically sick. The big scary one is to hear the word, the big C word. You go to a doctor, you haven't feel good, and the doctor says, you have cancer. There's just a signature. It's like somebody grabbed your breath from you. Because it's a kick, like really here, you can feel it. It's like all of a sudden, I am dying and there's nothing I can do about it. That's what the mind translates it into. Now, the big challenge is when you have things with the body that you really feel totally out of control with. You don't know what to do with the pattern at this time. It's still extremely important what words you choose to interpret the experience. This is where your free will, your freedom of choice, comes in. This is where you can use your freedom of choice to bind you into the hologram and let it run over you, or to begin your freedom process from the hologram so you can begin to master it. When we talk about assigning value judgment, making one thing bad and another thing good, now that doesn't mean everything is equal in itself as far as, well, you might as well go be a mass murderer because it doesn't matter. They're both just as, that's as good as being a priest or, a God being. Not exactly. It means you can acknowledge a disharmonic pattern as a disharmonic pattern. You can acknowledge that it has a counterpart. Somewhere there is a harmonic pattern. Somewhere there is the divine right expression of what appears to be a divine wrong. But what you're not going to do is attach yourself to either of those manifestations. If you need it always to be the right one, you are literally locking yourself into polarity, which will continually draw to you the other one. What you need to do is realize and trust a process that's involved. You can identify, okay, this appears to be the way this thing is. Somewhere, if it's a problem, it implies that the solution exists. And the solution isn't someplace else because everything's happening now. It's all in your little holographic space inside your Merkaba vehicle that all this projection's taking place. If you see a problem, the only thing it's telling you that you're seeing the lower frequency bands of that energy pattern. The problem is simply an energy pattern that will come into a set of actions in your hologram. It's an energy pattern that if it seems like a problem, you're actually perceiving its lower disharmonic state, which implies it has its other already harmonized divine blueprint state. If you can react to trauma and joy in an equal way, engaging them, but in a detached way, where you're not too attached to what the outcome is going to be, because you know whatever outcome is will be the highest. You've just taught your mind to say, I am creating the highest pattern here. I will bring the divine blueprint in, but I will not assign value as to how I think from this level that's supposed to look. All right? That's the beginning, where you learn to surrender a little bit, not your power to anybody else, but you surrender your judgment to love. This is the big trick, surrendering judgment to love, because judgment is polarity and love is unity. Now, I'm not using love in a fluffy, lightheaded sort of way. I'm using love with its true definition, a state of vibrational harmonization. The Christos pattern is the absolute state of vibrational harmonization, the pre-matter template, where everything else comes through on. That's where polarity doesn't happen yet. If you trust in the pre-matter template, in its perfect pattern of being able to manifest the harmonic, or the nicely flowing where energy flows, which means it feels better, space, you trust the situation to love. There's a way of saying, you can notice, I feel about this. Okay, I'm going into negative judgment. I don't want to do that. Okay, I'll go over here. I'll look at it positive. You can get caught in this. You don't know what to do with your mental body because you're so used to just getting caught in the feeling. It's like the judgments come up from the subconscious. That's bad. I feel this. Oh, that's bad. Or you said that. That's terrible. How could you do that? That kind of thing. Right? You need to catch your reaction patterns and make a choice. Catch it before you get sucked into the hologram with it, because that's what happens. Our consciousness that's supposed to be choosing the hologram gets twisted in to the hologram, and literally the hologram drags you around. Where you can go and have a crying jag for 4 weeks because somebody told you something terrible, or because your spouse decided he was going to leave you for the neighbor next door. You have a choice of how you'll interpret this. I mean, it's kind of funny. If you look at it like the spouse leaving kind of thing, you can say, okay, I love this person. We've been together for 40 years. We have the most wonderful relationship. And all of a sudden, your whole world crashes because that person comes home and says, I'm leaving. I fell in love with my secretary. They're just going to, there's another one of those. That's like the big C word. All of a sudden, you feel like the whole rug was swept out from under your life. Now, if you want to see how any situation can be really perceived from either of its harmonics. One, you can say, oh my God, I'm going to die. I love you so much. How am I going to live without you? And you can go into that whole, oh my God, I'm going to die my whole life. Then you get angry. How could you do this to me? And you go into the negative. That's the lower frequency pattern. Then there's the other part. There's actually a part of you that somewhere will react the opposite, where it'll go, thank you, have a nice life. I wish you really well. But the part of you that was in touch with all the things that you felt you needed to surrender in order to keep the harmony in the relationship, all of a sudden, we had a good relationship and I really love you too. And it's unfortunate because I thought we could maybe do some things together and stay together for a long time. But I really love you. And if it's something you need, that's good. And I'll go explore what things I might need to do. And all of a sudden, the whole situation isn't a negative, then it becomes a positive, which usually confuses the heck out of the person who just thinks they're going to drop a bomb on you. Because they come in like, ooh, I really don't want to tell the person, but I've got to get my freedom. So you tell them, and they react like, oh, okay, yeah, can I help you pack? Half the time, they'll change their mind. Half the time, when you're like, well, and not meanly, not saying I don't love you, but saying, oh, I love you very much. And it's kind of sad, because I really had some ideas that I thought we were going to do other things together, but obviously that's not working for you. And because the us takes both of us, and you're not content in it, well, I'll let go. I love you, but I'm not going to strangle you. Usually, all of a sudden they calm down, and they decide that, well, I'm not going to pack right now. And then you start to talk, because you reacted in a way that was peaceful and harmonious. You just let it go. You let it be. You weren't attached to the outcome. Personally, if you were going to look at what you'd like to happen, you'd rather them stay, maybe. But if they need to go, you'll survive. So you don't make it their fault. So you don't throw a whole bunch of emotional stuff into the situation and charge it more than it is. That's when you're going into neutral space. These are the ways we've been trained for so long to use our minds in ways that perpetually amplify problems and keep solutions invisible. When you realize problem and solution are just the different polarities, the higher frequency and the lower frequency. You can look at the problem sometimes as the miasm, or the sound. Actually, it's more the other way around. It's usually the problem is the thing that's transmitting out. It's the dion that's transmitting out. And it has its counterpart, solution, turning it back to vibration where then it can be changed. It has a solution, which will be the myon. You have myons and dions, and they are in polarity. How you solve them, how you bring problem and solution together into the same space is turning them into a trion, where you bring the polarities together, allow them to be. That literally brings them into their next octave up, their next highest level of expression. It turns them into trions, and it releases them from your hologram. It takes them, the whole pattern, into a healed state, into another hologram. That's the inner earth timeline. So our mental bodies, what we choose to do with our mental bodies is extremely important. And there's not like a book on this yet, like, okay, instead of looking at this way, I should look at it this way, right? I hope they give one of those books sometime soon, because it would be really helpful. We're so ingrained with our reaction patterns. We have to learn, really, to act instead of react. Because usually what happens, something will come up in our life, either from inside of us or from what appears to be outside of us, and immediately we react to it. We react to it with thought, word, because our emotions are reacting to it. And we follow the emotion instead of stepping back and saying, what is that pattern? We go into fight or flight, which means either run away from it or try to attack it and flatten it. One or the other. Fight or flight is a polarity drama that's being created by implants that are in the DNA, that are manifesting through implants that are in the planetary grid. One of the real interesting things about what we've been asked to do for this particular workshop and the round tables that are involved. I'll explain what round tables a little more in a minute. But the purpose, there's several purposes we've been asked to do round tables. There's temples that have to be cleared, crystal temples that are built on the things that, like on the cover of that Templar book, those big crystal things. These are underground structures of crystal that have been holding and running programs for a very long time. Each one of them, there's whole bunches of them all over the planet, each one of them has a different type of program, and it's keyed to a different frequency, which means its program affects one of the DNA strands, or a couple of them. The fight or flight program is held in the control point of the planetary grids for strand 2, second dimension, which is Stargate 2. Its location is Sarasota, Florida. The temple that we're clearing here is the one that's holding the program that's locking fight or flight response into the body. This is part of the secret, okay? This just came through. They're going, you're kidding. Oh, yeah, okay. This is why. This explains something, guys. Thank you. This explains something to me. I noticed that when people come here and stay here for any period of time, when we moved here, it was like, this is the greatest place to clear, to purge, because it just stirs everything up. The vibration here in the flash lines are a bunch of them crossing over at very high frequency rate. So your hologram comes out faster, and it directly affects the gook in the emotional body, because its predominant vibration is dimension 2, which is strand 2, which is chakra 2, which is the emotional body level. Okay? Now, there are several programs in this particular crystal temple network that are distorting the natural way that this area would be sending its information through the planetary grids. This is a broadcasting station for fight or flight impulse. I didn't know that until they just let me know that. And it makes sense because it's the D2 frequency control temple here. This one controls the D1 aspect and the D3 aspect of the planetary shields. It's from here, you transmit through here, and it'll affect all the other ones. And so we're getting fight or flight response on the emotional level, on the physical level, in chemicals. We're getting polarity reversals in literally how the subatomic particles are interacting with each other. But we're getting it on the mental level too, which means we're having a real hard time seeing that place of union where the two polarities come together and you don't react to them as if they're polarized, where you just have a love space with them and you don't have problems in your life. You don't even have challenges in your life. You just have life as it is, and you move through manifestation, realizing you can fully experience things, and you're learning more about everything as you do. So you have detached involvement. You can't do that very easily when you have certain portions of your waveforms, your myons, turned into dions and twisted in on themselves. This, and I didn't know this, it was part of the secret, and there's going to be more, there's more coming on this evening, they're saying, that this particular program is one of the primary programs that have created several things. Division in the self, by polarizing the three strands from each other. The physical, mental, and emotional bodies have been running at the wrong rotational speeds to each other, which means it's very difficult to get a clear line of communication between you, your body, and your emotions. Not to mention try to do it with your higher self as well. You can do it with your higher self because there's not a distortion to that degree in strand 4. So it can communicate down, and you can stabilize your mental body enough to get it where you can get it here. But try to anchor it in the body? I've had a heck of a time. You know, I'm a walk-in, and when I walked in, it's like, oh my God, I'm in prison. What is this thing? It doesn't respond to your thoughts. Well, yeah, what do you do with it? You know, I remember that the body, I felt like I was in a prison. There was something with the body where it's just not responsive, and it drags the emotions where it wants to, and this isn't the way it's supposed to work. What happened? I didn't realize the degree that this was being programmed in. It's being programmed into the DNA. It's making chemicals work differently. It's also responsible for the stuff that comes up between males and females, because it's affecting males and females in different ways, because male and female templates have the reflection of each other on strand 1, 2, and 3, and it's creating polarities where there's certain bondings and there's certain literal repelling of information between each other. So it's very difficult in certain areas to create bonding, while in other areas we're both experiencing. It's both neutral. Let it be neutral. Go after it as energy and find the neutral point inside of you. You can diffuse conflicts with each other this way. We're going to help to do this on a big level, the people that participate in the Monday's Roundtable. There are certain frequencies that we're going to run that we're going to clear the program out of that temple, which means we're going to put back the natural state, the natural pattern in the planetary grids of how strand 1, strand 2, and strand 3 were supposed to communicate with each other. It'll take a little bit of time before it's not going to be bang zoom, we did it immediately and all of a sudden we're all fixed. It doesn't go that fast. It takes a while for the hologram to catch up with what the healing has been. But if we continue, and there's a process too, the hologram will only hold a new pattern if it maintains the critical mass. If the old pattern had a lot of critical mass to it, and you just put in a new pattern once, you might get it to come out once. But you're not going to get it to come out again if you just don't keep feeding the new pattern. This is where Merkaba mechanics comes in. The more you do salutations, they're the ones by yourself, to get your fields going the right way, the more it will hold in the healing that you put into yourself, and the more it will straighten out strands 1, 2, and 3. So we get to help make the fight or flight situation heal. So if you don't fight and you don't fly, this will be my question, what do you do? Stand still and wave? No. I'm here.
Be vulnerable.
Yes, that is part of it.
How long does the process take to clear this?
Okay, to clear the temple itself, you mean? Or before it starts, like, clearing everybody? This whole pattern's been here since 25,500 BC. All right, it's been in the hologram, embedded very deeply for quite a while. It has a lot of critical mass, but it's been anchoring through a progressive in-the-moment point. There is a sonic beam that has been coming through these grids. It's attached to each of these temple sites, these crystal temple sites. So it's not just that they were programmed once in the past. They're being amplified every so often with bursts of energy that are literally coming through the solar spirals. So the pattern has been re-energized and re-energized. Now, we've disconnected the main source of the feeding station, which was at Stonehenge, where it was literally linked into the grids. But all those other smaller temple complexes still are holding. They're imprinting, and they're still receiving the information through the stellar spirals that's being beamed down from Nibiru. That's the planet that right now is in density 2. It's a sonic wave pattern, a standing sonic wave pattern that's been controlling the planetary Templar and causing these mutations. The mutation is called the checkerboard mutation because it's literally turned what should have been just a field of scalar waves, turned some off, some on, some off, some on, some off, where they don't communicate the right way anymore because there's all these blank spots, like a black and white checkerboard, where the black spots aren't supposed to be there. And if they were supposed to be black spots, they're in the wrong place. So they've created all sorts of electromagnetic interference zones and static zones here where the energy just doesn't flow right. Now, it will take, last month, it was the first time since 25,500 BC that the Nibiruan grid central anchoring station was actually shut down. Now, it was shut down by running roundtables because we were able to run the D12 frequency into the bodies. We were able to run then what's called the Kirashe and Kundere frequencies, open up the primal sound field currents in the bodies, where we become standing sound waves. And because we are standing sound waves that have D12 and higher frequency running through us, the Nibiruan grid is locked in at a reverse, where the flashline sequences are in reverse, sending reversals into the grids, at D11. D12 and higher can override the code and set it back to what it is. That was done to the central linking station already. Now it needs to be done to each of the other sites. There are 24 sites that it's still being run through. They're not as powerful as the main linking station, but they're still pretty powerful. This is why we're going to talk about later, probably when we come back from break or dinner, one or the other. We'll talk about we call it the stewardship mission that run, the Templar Stewardship Initiative, or the Planetary Christos Realignment Mission. We're literally going to several locations that are the key sites that if you recode them, the other temples will recode to the D12 pattern. Now, this one we're doing, the one at Sarasota, Florida, the round table that we're going to do Monday is going to do this process. Roundtables. I want to talk to you about roundtables because especially the people who haven't, you just kind of walked into this and you did this really weird kind of interesting thing last night. Let me do what I did. Why did I do that? If we can understand, first of all, the significance and the importance of Merkaba vehicles, our own Merkaba vehicle, it literally has the ability to control what polarity is doing in the body and whether or not myons and dions can come together to be trions, whether we can find that point of balance that allows us to move through our hologram in a peaceful, joyful state. Merkaba, on a large level, when you're dealing with not just your own, but everybody has Merkabas. If you can realize Merkaba, when it's spinning in the right direction, the speed ratios are the right way, have the ability to reset the organic imprint for each dimensional level that you're affecting of the Partakai phasing, which is how Partakai units break down, how much thrust each one has when they become Partakai and Partakam, which controls the distribution of electrical charge and force between myons and dions. If the myon and dion force is not, the interactions aren't the right way, they cannot come together. They'll repel each other, they'll fragment and create distortion patterns. So when we use Merkaba on a personal level, we have the ability to reset manually the natural divine blueprint of Partakai phasing rhythm. So we start to get our electromagnetic communication systems that our consciousness is composed of back into its natural order where energy flows the way it's supposed to. If you do that on a personal level, it will create progressively personal healing, which will progressively project outward a hologram that has less and less disharmonic patterns in it. The way to find peace is to be peace. The way to find love is to be love. This means that you must have the pattern of harmony inside of yourself first. Merkaba, and using it the right way, can progressively assist that and using DNA activation to clear and activate more quickly, to get rid of distortions in there. You are progressively learning to be love, a state of vibrational harmonization. You're learning to be peace, the still point that allows itself to perceive and experience as the hologram runs through it. It is in the hologram, but not of it. You can experience reality from peace, which is different than detachment. Detachment is resistance. Detachment is going, don't like it, get away from me, don't touch me. You're in polarity when you do detachment. When you do peace, I am peace. Try that statement. You know how there's a mathematical program behind every word? Try this different. Say, I want peace. Say that. I want peace. Do you feel peaceful?
Yes.
Right. Say, I am peace.
I am peace.
Can you feel the difference in what that does to your condition and your consciousness? If you want, implies you do not have. Implies you're in polarity. I am this. It's different than saying I'm going to get, I'm going to manifest, I want to have. I declare it so I have it now. No. You don't have it either. You have to be it. You are it. You can kind of go, I am new car. Yeah, I am trip to the Bahamas. There's a new way of relating to the things that you would like to see in your hologram. If you realize all that hologram is you, okay, I want love of my life to come and sweep me away and take me to a wonderful castle someplace. Okay, if you want it, you'll be wanting it for a long time. However, I am this. You become what it is you think you want. That's saying, I am this. I have the power. The more you say that, the more you energize that pattern, you will bring it to you. Now the thing that you are advised to decide to be first when you're dealing with learning to interact with your hologram is peace is the place to start from. I am peace, which is the state of balance between joy and sorrow, between fly away and fight. Peace. Start from peace. And love. I am love. I am a state of vibrational harmonization now. When you can get your mind to not argue with you, because you'll have all sorts of little thought patterns coming, I am not. You know, if I were peaceful, I wouldn't have to say this. You know what I mean? That kind of stuff. At first, you need to objectify it to yourself, to hear yourself say it, to make the statement, let the sound run here, which is your past, and let it run here. So when you say something out loud, you're actually putting it in your past, because this out here is the hologram that manifested from the units that you had activated in your DNA template right before you move to the next one. And as this is out here, you've already moved your state of consciousness up to the next level that's getting ready to project out. So this is your past. So if you want to heal, you need to anchor it in your past as well as have it as your intention inside. The I am statements are very useful and very helpful. Start with I am peace and I am love. And love is a state of vibrational harmonization. I am this. I am. In fact, you know that I am that I am? Think about what that's saying. Think about that. Do you see the twist in that statement? I am that I am. It's not I am that I am. I am this I am puts it here. It puts it away from you when you say I am that I am. This is another part of the Anunnaki twist on truth. I am this I am means it is you, you are it. This, there's no separation. That is something out there. There's something away from you. I am that over there. You even say I am this over there. I am this here. This is a word that puts it here. That is a word that puts it elsewhere. Little twists in words. Play with these. Start to look at how language is used in daily life, and you'll start to catch things. And this is about embedding things in your DNA that will come out in your hologram. This is kind of funny that the Anunnaki programming people like to use 90%, sometimes, mostly it's about 80% true stuff, good stuff, with 20% twist. That little 20% twist changes the whole meaning and the whole effect of what it'll do to your hologram. I am this, I am. We are this, we are. Try to think about the meaning behind words and realize you are setting sound grids. And the whole key to manifestation is starting from the still point. I am peace. And starting from absolute engagement, not detachment, engagement. I am love. Love is a state of vibrational harmonization, which means I am everything, every vibrational field around me. I am this, this is me. I am in love. When you become in love with your world and your universe, everything changes in the hologram. You can walk it and be in it and not of it. And it can move through you and people can be who they are and say what they want. But you can still, I am peace. You can respond with peace if you are peace. You cannot give peace to somebody or to a situation if you aren't it. You have to be what sets the hologram. I am peace. I am love. I am abundance. I am money. Right? For people who want money. Those kind of things. The want statements will get you a guarantee that you will keep wanting it in your hologram. The I am statements and the this statements will bring it into your hologram because you are saying, I already have this. If you already have it, you don't need for it. And if you are God, you already have everything. So there's a sense to it. And this is the beginnings of understanding how to control all this stuff, how to get mastery over what your myons and dions are doing and what their angle of particle spin is when they collide with each other and all this kind of stuff. When you start to change your words and how you use your thoughts on the conscious level, you are learning to direct this back to its divine blueprint and the way it's supposed to operate. We're amazing beings. We're doing all this and we don't even know it. Right? We are constantly doing these things, but right now they have been working in ways because we're using language, because we've been taught to use language. If you look at the Bible stories, they say, yeah, the Tower of Babel thing happened, and God came down and wiped things out, and then scrambled the languages of the people. And then, of course, after that, you have another piece of Anunnaki history that comes through the channels that says, oh yes, and we came in when you were in a pathetic state and taught you languages. Uh-oh. They taught us languages after the Tower of Babel incident, which had to do with when they put in the final big sonic beam, took out the Babylon civilization, which is around Stargate 10, when they literally fragmented, they separated the languages because they wiped out the DNA templates where everybody was babbling and couldn't even think straight. Then they came in to teach the wandering tribes the languages so they could become civilized. These were majestic races before all of this. Our language patterns have tricked us, and it's in every language on the planet right now. Every language has its base in the original sacred languages, and then there were Nibirian twists, and then later draconian twists put into these to make them mean something different, so they manifest as certain conditions. Our whole political, social, economic mess that this planet is run on is being created by that. And everybody at this point is raised in the school system. You're a little kid, you go in the school system, oh yeah, this is what you have to do to survive here, and you have to, grow up to get a job, and this is what a nice person does, and you have to love your government. God, in America, we have to do pledge allegiance to the flag. Excuse me, I don't worship flags. I worship existence. I don't worship anything, in fact. I hold it in great reverence. I don't worship. Time? Okay, we're getting that. There's another difference. And you say, well, is it okay to pray? Be careful with the word pray. Intend. Send love. Be love. Pray the way it is used. There's a word that says, I'm in subservience to you. I'm going to ask you for permission because I don't have power. Don't pray. Intend divinely. Intend with love, with your Christos. Yes?
And I wanted to ask two things. I found that when you state gratitude for something that you have, that you're wanting to that opens the heart the most. I wanted to ask about that. And the other thing I just want to tell the group that I've discovered that when you're really upset and your mind wants to attach it to a meaning, start barking and meowing.
Oh, I love it. Yes. I saw you get into that with the group in Kauai. You did something like that. That is brilliant. That is a great way to break the programming pattern. That was very much worth listening to. She said, at that point when you find yourself, you may want to go in the bathroom and do it, not just at the person because they'll think you have a disease. But in order to catch yourself, if you're starting to get, like, say you're in an argument with somebody, we're going to attach meaning to one of those things. You're not neutral anymore. You are not peace right now. That means you're getting dragged into one of the polarities. Instead of letting it come out with, well, you did this, assigning meaning to it, which means you're giving it definition and you're giving it permission to become a thought, just like you said. Don't do that. She said, meow or bark instead. Change the language pattern where you're letting it out. It does work. You can always howl. If you don't like meowing and barking, you can always howl. Now, what we're saying is, realize all these are sounds. All these things are sounds. We're used to training our sounds into words that create templates that come into manifestation. If you look at a thing and say, oh, this is bad, like somebody just got run over by a car and died in front of you. Oh, how terrible. Oh, this is just awful. And you feel, it'll take your feelings right down, and you're missing the point that if that happened in front of you, it's probably because you were being asked to serve as something to help their consciousness to get out of this system because it was their time to leave. If you can catch yourself before you get caught up in one of the polarities by assigning a value judgment to it, you should be able to say, well, if your perspective and my perspective are neutral. We both have our own, and you're not right and I'm not right, and you're not wrong and I'm not wrong. We just are. If you can get in that space, you're fine. You don't need to bark. But if you find yourself, you can feel it. The energy builds up from the emotional body. It starts to come up from here, and it wants expression. It wants words. It wants those words so it can identify the problem, and if it's somebody that's in your face doing something, you want to tell them that problem. You are going to make a really strong template. All right? If instead you want to diffuse that template to shift the whole pattern, if you did, like she said, use a different type of sound, you could sing instead. If you're going to... the person you're going to fight with thinks you're nuts, right? And the person says, excuse me, I love you, I need to sing right now because I am peace. They look at you like, how do you argue with that?
Your agreement. Like you say, when we get into this space, let's do this, and then it becomes a game, and you can shift.
Exactly.
But the voice has to let it go.
Yes, she's absolutely right. It needs to come up from the D2 level that's stuck in your chakras down here. It needs to move up through the D3 level and the mental body and up to the expression chakras. It's going to want to come out here. If it doesn't come up and come out here, it's going to go down and come out in the body. which will be some kind of ouch, that hurts, that doesn't feel good, you know. So there are ways. Okay, I was told I have to like cut this because we have a schedule so we can get everybody with everything they need by the time we have to get out of the room tonight. Because tonight's the last night we're in this room, so we have to have it, you know, cleaned up and out by 10 o'clock. So we'll stop now. Not too bad. We're supposed to. Well, I'm 15 minutes late on taking a break, so we'll take a break really fast now, and then we'll get back to why we do the round tables, what we're actually doing when we do the round tables, why they help us, why they help the planet. And tonight we're going to finish up with explaining what the Christos realignment mission is and about how we're clearing temples, and that's when they have a little bit more of the data that was on security release. They haven't even given it to me yet. So we'll have a quick break and then we'll come back. We have still a lot to cover. What's really interesting about this workshop is it's coming through live on the spot. Some of the information that you know how I get on a roll and I just keep talking? Well, it's just, I can feel it coming in up here, like they're giving me the understanding of the thought, and going, oh, okay, and it comes out, right? So there's a lot of things that I'm learning here with you, and it's really exciting because I'm watching this unfold here moment to moment, where, okay, there's some more things to learn, okay, there's some more things to learn. Now, with like, for instance, the I am that I am versus the I am this I am, I've used the I am that I am, meaning I am that, all that is, all that out there. All that out there. That separates me from it. I never even realized that. So even with the level of work that I've been doing with it, I didn't see the little subtle twists that are in there. It is, I am this. You're right there in it. You are engaged. You are not separated from it. So there's all sorts of subtleties. And it was really interesting when we went on break. Michael and I were talking about something, and he said something in relation to something else, and all of a sudden my brain just went right to that little bit of a statement. There was a lesson under there that has to do with another way of looking at something that we're so used to doing that we don't realize we're doing something that's the opposite of empowerment. The little sentence that was like in a different context that had nothing to do with this particular issue was said, what if somebody came up to you in a parking lot and for no reason at all just hauled off and smacked you in the face? You know, what do you do with this? You have to learn to, like, you know, to handle your reactions to this person that did this action. My brain went, whoa, wait a minute. Did I? For no reason at all. Okay, that's a cue right there. There's always a reason. And then it went to, wait a minute. I don't see anything at all ever in my experience that is not in my template. I just smacked myself in the face. There's a big difference here, and this is the heart of the victim-victimizer pattern and how we stay in polarity, playing either one or the other. There is a huge lesson under it, and I will try to verbalize it because it's a lesson that's just coming down as I go along here. Where if you look at, somebody comes up and does something nasty to you, or says something nasty to you, the first thing you want to do is, well, that wasn't nice.